Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and enjoy this fanfic part 1. Now let's start the fanfic. A few days passed, seemingly time was flowing faster than it normally did, as if in a hurry for something. Naruto had gone back and forth with his thoughts. A few sleepless nights as his mind refused to home what he had been told. Like everything else in life, the sleepless nights passed and he returned to sleeping peacefully at night. His mind was able to accommodate the new knowledge he had learned. Regardless of how painful and how much it angered him, he accepted it. Holding a grudge had never been his strength. Still, even though he could not hold hatred for those who wronged him willingly, it did not mean he was pleased with their actions. He was far from that in all honesty. Nevertheless, for him to move on with his life, he could not hold on to the past. Things were done, choices were made that affected him. He has been living so far with those choices and he would continue to live on with them. Even now that he had realized just how deep the secrets that were hidden from him, he could not allow that to stop him from living. He had endured so much in his young life to be stopped by something as his revealed parentage. His father was dead, the Sandaime was dead, only a screwed up person inside the head could hold a grudge against the dead. Not that he could actually hate his father even though he was alive. Hating him was beyond him. People who hold grudges against the dead are those that run about to curse the graves of the dead as if the rotten bones could hear them. Regardless, he did not have to like their choices because they were dead. He just had to accept it because there was nothing that he could do to possibly change what has happened. What had happened happened. He just had to find a way to live with the burden that he was left to shoulder on his own. His father left the burden for him to carry, and he would carry it. He could not dump it on someone. Uzumaki Naruto, or rather Namikaze Naruto, stared a picture of a red-haired woman with blue eyes. His face was formed as his. Even though he held the picture within his hand, the image itself was already plastered across his mind. He admired her, even though he will never hear her voice as long as he lived in this world. She was his mother, a woman who carried the Kyuubi within her gut just as he does now. Kushina Uzumaki. Naruto sighed and laid the image beside him. Even though it was just memory, something of the past, it still held great value within his heart. Nothing could be more valuable than the image of his mother. He did not need to see the face of the Yondaime, his father, in a picture. All he had to do was look in the mirror and he would see a chibi Minato. Jiraiya had always said that he reminded him of his former student. Even he could not doubt the uncanny resemblance he shared with his father. He had done through all the staff Itachi had brought for him. There were pictures of his mother and father, notes in Fuinjutsu and the formula of the Flying Thunder God technique, and some notes in completing the Rasengan. With another sigh escaping his lips, Naruto got up from the bed slowly and made his way to the kitchen. It was just past noon. During this time Itachi was surely drinking his tea. Each day on a set time, Itachi always had his tea. Naruto was not disappointed when he walked into the kitchen and saw the said Uchiha. Itachi shifted his eyes from the hot black liquid inside a mug to the form of Naruto. He had let the blonde do his own thinking and come to his own conclusions. He felt that it was necessary for Naruto to think on his own and make a choice of his own instead of manipulating him into thinking what he wanted him to think. It would not have helped anyone if he did something like that. He had already manipulated Sasuke into hating him while he making it ambition to kill him, and where was Sasuke now? Naruto took a sat down across the table. He never did like drinking tea. That was Itachi's thing. Nevertheless, that did not mean that because he did not enjoy it as much as Itachi he did not drink it. A few moments of silence passed. Naruto just wandered across the elemental nations with his thoughts while Itachi sipped his tea. Have you thought through everything? Itachi asked, placing his now empty mug on the table. Naruto replied with a small nod. Yes, I have, his voice taking a flat tone. And? Itachi asked with an impassive face as if he was not interested in his own question. I am not pleased with the fact that the Sandaime had lied to me, and Jiraiya hid it from me. Tsunade also knew of this and yet relented to tell me. However, I cannot blame Tsunade since she only returned to the village. Naruto replied nonchalantly. His mindset had changed in a way that he no longer had it in him to call Tsunade Ba-chan. Your father? Itachi asked again. He cared less for what Naruto thought of Tsunade and Jiraiya. What interested him were Naruto's thoughts towards his father. Naruto adopted a thoughtful look for a second. It quickly disappeared upon its appearance. Naruto's face just became blank. Itachi could not really tell what he was thinking. I am not happy with what he did to me. If sacrificing his life was not enough, he also sacrificed me for the sake of the village. He said flatly. Regardless of that, he was my father, and I his son. I cannot change that. He did what he did as Hokage of Konoha. I can live with that. It's a little sad that he chose the village first over me. Itachi could not conclude whether he was mad or not. The tone of his voice was blank, no hint of anger of any emotion dripped from it. Added with the fact that he could not guess what was going on within the blonde's head, Itachi decided to go with the thought that Naruto did not like that his father chose to use him as the Kyuubi's container, but understood that he had no choice given that he was the Yondaime Hokage. It was duty to protect the village, even if it meant making his only son a Jinchuriki. Do you hate him? Itachi asked. Naruto shook his head blankly. I don't like his choice to stick the Kyuubi inside me. He cursed me to live the life I have lived within Konoha. Naruto stated, regardless of that, he is my father, and I just don't have the capacity to hate anyone, especially my own father. I do understand his position given that he was the Hokage and had a duty to protect the village. So I bear no fangs for him. He said, looking straight at Itachi. Your father wanted you to be seen as a hero. That was why the Sandaime publicly revealed your status as a Jinchuriki. He believed that the village he died protecting would treat his son as a hero. Itachi said after a few moments of silence. Single quote. And that turned out very well. Konoha saw Uzumaki Naruto as the hero who jailed the Kyuubi, saving them from being destroyed. Naruto said sarcastically. Though being sarcastic, his demeanor never changed, it stayed as it had been, blank. Your father was a great man, Naruto, Itachi said, ignoring the sarcasm. He desired peace. It was just unfortunate that he had to die soon and being so young. Nevertheless, he died a noble death. Naruto looked at Itachi with a slightly raised brow. Peace. Itachi nodded. In your short life you have yet to see what the shinobi world is like. But you have seen some despicable things given that you are a shinobi. Itachi replied, keeping his calm demeanor. You have yet to see war and what follows after it. Konoha, for example, is enjoying temporary peace. The village has no qualms with others and the villagers live happily with one another. However, in your case, I doubt you have seen that since you have always had to endure hatred from the villagers. Itachi said and paused. The shinobi world is full of unnecessary bloodshed. People lose their lives each day. Women and children are raped, sold to forced labor, and villagers fight each other for power, dominance, and just because of greed. Itachi paused, allowing Naruto process every word he had said. Your father wanted to change that. He wanted the shinobi world to be free of that, free of war. He wanted a world where the nations were united, in agreement with one another. He wanted a world where brothers did not betray each other. He wanted peace. Naruto's blank expression was replaced by a thoughtful look. He never seen the world in a way Itachi saw it. However, he had seen some of things that were truly despicable. His father did have a noble cause. A world where villages could be in agreement with one another was certainly a world worth dreaming. He liked that sound of it. Peace, huh? Naruto said. I have never thought of something like it. I used to dream of being Hokage just so I could gain the acknowledgement of the villagers, to prove my existence. He concluded with his thoughtful look still firmly in place. The Shadaime tried to bring peace during his time. Unfortunately, he failed despite all his power and humbleness. The Sandaime was next to try, but even he could not do it, Itachi stated. Nobody now tries to bring peace to the world today. Long-lasting peace is seen as something impossible to achieve. If we cannot trust each other, even steps to peace cannot be taken. Sunagakure easily betrayed Konoha despite being an ally to the village. Naruto said, if villages can easily betray each other and have no trust with each, they can never be in agreement with one another. Itachi nodded. Trust is something hard to gain, but rather easy to lose. Silence greeted the two, as both were speaking amongst themselves within their thoughts. Naruto was thinking about something: bloodshed. The life of Shinobi was ultimately to kill all the enemies of her villages. That made Shinobi killers, life takers. He had seen some people take other people's lives without so much as remorse. He did not get why death was necessary even if the enemy was beaten. What are your views on killing? Naruto asked. He found it ironic that he was asking the question to a man who was responsible for the massacre of the Uchiha. Deaths are necessary sometimes. It is unfortunate, but often it has to be done to protect and save the lives of many. Itachi replied. Still, I think killing someone is wrong. Naruto argued. You have yet to kill, have you? Itachi asked, earning a nod from Naruto. You are a shinobi, you are bound to take the life of someone one day. Nevertheless, just because we kill does not make us monsters. We show that we are still humans by not enjoying the act of killing. A true shinobi accepts that killing is part of protecting, but never enjoys killing. Naruto decided not to take the conversation any further than it was already. He certainly did not like the fact he would have to kill someone one day. He just hoped that day never comes. Itachi saw that Naruto did not want to further with the topic. Did you find the scrolls one brought useful? He asked, changing the subject. Naruto nodded. Yes, some scrolls with fuinjutsu will help me reach a depth level of understanding of the art. Naruto said. What I found most interesting was my father's notes in completing the Rasengan and the formula of the Flying Thunder God technique. Before the day ages, my clones should be out there beginning working on completing the Rasengan and deciphering the formula to the Hiraishin. Naruto stated with a small smile. Itachi could tell he was excited by the prospect of learning the Hiraishin. How do you complete the Rasengan? I thought it was a complete jutsu. You did not read the scrolls? Naruto asked with a slightly raised brow. Itachi shook his head in response. Well, the Rasengan is made from pure chakra. You manipulate chakra alone to form it. But to complete it, you add your chakra element to it and it will take a new form. In my case, wind element, and I will be able to create a powerful jutsu. Well, that is according to my father's notes. He was never able to complete it. Itachi nodded. He was interested in what jutsu Naruto would be able to create after successfully adding his wind element to the Rasengan. The Rasengan was already an A-rank jutsu. Adding a powerful element as wind would certainly make it even more powerful. When are going to continue with my training? Naruto asked. Learning the Hiraishin and trying to complete the Rasengan was something he would be adding to the training Itachi was already giving him. Itachi stood up from his seat. Let us go now, he said. Naruto had no complaints. He followed Itachi to their small training ground. He was eager to pick up from where he left off. He had not trained with Itachi for a month now. Naruto went through another training session that ended with body echoing with unbearable pain. Yet he made no complaints, for he knew that after the training it would have been worth it. There was no pain without a reward. He would get his rewards after the training. Konoha. It had been 2 years since Naruto left the village. It had been 2 years since Jiraiya had been looking for Naruto after the blonde had abandoned him. For 2 years, he searched all over the elemental nations and yet he found no clue as to where the blonde was. He found nothing. No one had even seen the blonde. It was as if he had just vanished from the face of the elemental nations. Naruto had disappeared without leaving a trace. What Jiraiya was certain of was that he never left the borders of the Fire Country. If he did, regardless of how good he might be at covering his tracks, he would have known. He was positive that the blonde was still in the Fire Country, Where was the question? The fire country was rather large and he could not search the entire country looking for a single person. With a sigh, Jiraiya looked at the Hokage's tower from the Hokage monument. He had returned to the village to face Tsunade's wrath. Over the past 2 years, he had lost all connections with Tsunade as he searched for Naruto. He could not lie to her, thus he decided it was better to avoid speaking to her. Even if one of her messages got to him, he never replied. He raised his right hand, which was holding a bottle of sake. He began to take a few gulps of the sake until the bottle was empty. He put on a brave face and wiped off his mouth ready to face Tsunade. Hokage's office. Tsunade sat behind her desk doing her paperwork. She detested doing the paperwork, but it was duty to complete them, thus she was left with no choice but to do it. The paperwork was something of an everyday occurrence. She had to do it every day, and each day she would get a headache because of the load. The load never ended. Just when she would think that she was done, Shizune would bring another load, much to her dismay. Tsunade sighed and leaned back to her chair. Ever since Naruto left the village, she had stopped consuming alcohol. She did get much work done without having to spend her time drinking. Despite that, she did miss her sake. Surely, now she would have been savoring a cup of sake with no one in her face to disturb her. Back when she was still drinking, Shizune would always budge into her office, stopping her from drinking. It always annoyed her, but she understood that her apprentice wanted her to get some work done. Thinking of Naruto, she did miss him. She missed seeing him budging into her office calling her, Ba-chan, demanding for a mission. She missed every little annoying thing about him. Even the fact he would always try to run away whenever she wanted to check his physical health, as he hated hospitals. She missed having to have Shizune and Sakura chase him around the village to get him back to the hospital. It was now 2 years, 2 whole years without seeing the large smile that always found a way to Naruto's face. She just hoped that he had changed and went back to normal and did not stay as he was when he left the village. It would pain her to see him in that condition he was again. Naruto to her was not Naruto without a goofy fox grin and eyes that brightened with life and happiness. She also hoped that Jiraiya was training him to his best. She wanted her Naruto be strong when he does return to the village. She wanted him to have the strength of at least a Junin. She could expect that much from 3 years of training. Being a Junin, he could protect himself better. Even though he might be able to protect himself if he does return strong as a Junin, Tsunade would never stop worrying about him. With him being a Junin meant that Naruto would have to do heavy missions. As such, he would see things that she rather he did not see. Jiraiya had yet to give her any progress report. Something that was odd from the Sannin. Under normal circumstances, Jiraiya would have been sending her progress reports once every 2 or 3 months. Ever since he left, he had yet to send her any report, not even tell her where he was or doing. He had not even attempted to contact her or respond to any of her messages. She viewed it as suspicious behavior. The window to her office bust open as Jiraiya made his entrance. He did not get anywhere near Tsunade, fearing for the health of his beautiful body. He stayed at the window. "I'm home," Jiraiya said with a large grin on his face. He wanted to start things lightly for when he does have to deliver the news. "It's about time you showed up, pervert," Tsunade stated, ignoring the fact that Jiraiya did something she had abundantly told him not to. That did not matter now, there were pressing matters she had to discuss with him. "So why haven't you made any contact with me and why have not responded to any of my messages?" Tsunade asked with a straight face. Jiraiya became nervous. "Well, you see, I have been busy that I did not have the time to respond. Nevertheless, here I am. This beats responding by a letter. This way you get to see my beautiful face," Jiraiya said, getting over his nervousness. A tick mark formed on Tsunade's head, but she quickly had it vanish. "So how is he?" Jiraiya scratched his forehead, trying to find a better way to say it. He found none, so he decided to say it like it was. Well, you see, Haim, a few days after we left the village, Naruto ran away from me. It took a few seconds for Tsunade to register what Jiraiya had said. When she did, all hell broke loose. What? Her voice shook the very foundations of the village of Konohagakure no Sato. Everyone who was close to the office quickly put some distance between him or her and the Hokage's tower. When the Godime made a screech like that, she was definitely not in a good mood. Moreover, when she was in a bad mood, things tended out to be nasty for whoever was in her office. It's not my fault, Haim. I had left him at a hotel room we had booked. When I returned from meeting my contact, he was gone. Jiraiya said, positioning both his hands in front of him in a defensive manner. Jiraiya, Tsunade said as a murderous aura radiated around her. Her eyes lost their color as she stood up with clenched fists. She was beyond angry. Haim, please, don't do anything. I am also worried about him. Jiraiya protested, knowing what was about to come. He had his hands in front of himself ready to defend himself. His skin paled with each step Tsunade took towards him. Cold shivers rocked down his spine at the murderous aura that surrounded the blonde Hokage. Jiraiya, how could you? Tsunade uttered again, though not looking for an answer from Jiraiya. She got within touching distances of the Sannin. Her very breath was hot and intense enough to burn Jiraiya's skin. She grabbed the pervert by his collar and glared at him with a piercing look. Then it began. Jiraiya's girly screams echoed throughout Konoha for an hour as Tsunade broke every bone in his body. 3 hours later, after a surgery, Jiraiya's whole body was bandaged. He looked like a mummy more than anything. Despite having every bone in his body broken more than 10 times by Tsunade, he always made a speedy recovery. Something that surprised even Tsunade, as she could not explain how it came to be. So despite his condition, in a few days he would be out there doing his research. Explain everything to me, Jiraiya. Tsunade barked impatiently, staring at the Sannin. I already told you, Jiraiya stated with a sigh. His body still hurt because of the beating he received. We booked a hotel in a town just 3 days a walk away from Konoha. I told him to stay at the hotel while I went to meet up with my spy contact. When I returned, he was gone along with his traveling documents. Jiraiya explained everything. Tsunade sighed. Given how the condition in which Naruto left the village, it was believable that he would run away from Jiraiya. From what she had heard, Naruto was crafty enough to run away without a trace. But she was not going to let Jiraiya off the hook like that. It was his responsibility to make sure that something like that did not happen. What have you been doing over the past 2 years? Tsunade asked with narrowed eyes. I have been searching for him all over the elemental nations. Jiraiya replied, looking at the ceiling. And I was not able to find him, not even a trace. The fact that a 13-year-old got away from him hurt his pride. So that was why you decided to inform me. Tsunade stated, so if you had found him you would never have told me that he had ran away. Tsunade stated accusingly. Jiraiya smiled nervously. Tsunade knew him better. He would never have told her something like that. She would have freaked out if he did, and it was good for his health if he did not. Tsunade sighed and took a seat beside Jiraiya's bed. So you don't know where he is, what he is doing and how he is doing? She concluded. Jiraiya nodded. The toads know where he is, he said. What? Tsunade said. Then why didn't they tell you? Because Naruto asked them not to, Jiraiya replied through gritted teeth. He has been a loyal summoner to the toads and yet they refused to tell him where Naruto was. He was like a senior summoner, and Naruto was just a junior summoner, and yet they took the word of Naruto. That brat, Tsunade muttered bitterly. The fact that Naruto told the toads not to reveal his location meant that he did not want to be found. Gamabunta did tell me that he is fine though. By the looks of it, he is training somewhere with someone, but I found that hard to believe. Tsunade nodded. Naruto could not have someone training him outside Konoha. He did not know any shinobi outside the village. The logical conclusion would be that he was training on his own with the toads helping him. What now? Tsunade asked in a defeated tone. I will keep looking for him, that is after I get out of this place. Jiraiya replied. How is it going with Sasuke? He asked, changing the subject. So far so good. Danzo has succeeded in teaching some manners to the brat. Tsunade said, not showing any interest to what she has just said. He has already made Junin and I had Kakashi take over the training. I figured that Kakashi would be a good influence to him. Jiraiya nodded. I did not expect that his training would excel so fast. It does seem that Danzo's training methods are very effective. He commented. Yes, it does. Nevertheless, he tends to have his trainees turn into emotionless killing robots. That is why I had Kakashi take over. Tsunade replied. She could care less for the Uchiha brat. However, a change in his attitude would make things for her. What do you plan to do with him? I plan to have him become an Anbu on temporary basis other than that he will operate like any other Junin, Tsunade said, getting up from her seat. I am going back to the office. Stay here until I clear you, is that clear? Tsunade said with a fierce glare at Jiraiya. Jiraiya nodded and Tsunade proceeded to leave the room. As soon as Tsunade left, Jiraiya made his miraculous recovery. He stripped off his bandages with a few winces and left through the window. Research awaited him. 2 years 10 months after Naruto left Konoha. Naruto jumped back, avoiding Itachi's punch, which crashed into the ground, creating a small crater. Naruto dashed towards while the Uchiha's fist was still planted on the ground. He swung his right foot, attempting to land a kick on Itachi's face. Itachi sensed the attack and looked up. He positioned both his hands and blocked the kick. The kick had so much force that it pushed Itachi back, and made him wince. The wince was never shown on his face. Naruto continued his assault by raising his other foot. He swung it and attempted a roundhouse kick at his opponent. The kick came at Itachi with so much speed that he could not avoid it. His hands were still recovering from Naruto's previous kick. He only managed to bring out one hand to block the kick. It was not enough, as the kick sent him flying. Naruto did not give Itachi time to recover as he appeared above Itachi. He applied wind chakra to his fist, preparing for a bone-cracking punch. He punched Itachi to his chest, sending him crashing down like a bullet. As soon as Itachi hit the ground with a loud crash, Naruto noticed that there was something wrong. Itachi would not have been caught easily. Genjutsu. Naruto thought to himself. He held a single-hand seal, Kai. He muttered and dispelled the illusion. He sensed something from behind. Spinning around, Naruto saw Itachi dashing at him at fast speeds. Naruto could do nothing as Itachi's knee crashed into his gut. Itachi added to the assault with a powerful punch to Naruto's face. The punch sent Naruto in flight. Naruto recovered quickly before he hit something and flipped in midair. He landed on the ground in a crouched position before standing up and looking at Itachi impassively. You caught me in your genjutsu the moment I appeared above you. Naruto stated. Itachi nodded. You are getting good at detecting genjutsu, he commented. It was indeed true, Naruto had become good at detecting his illusions. When they started training, Naruto did not have any skills at genjutsu. He could be caught in one for the whole day and still not be able to recognize that he had been caught in a genjutsu. Naruto said no word any further. There was no need for him to say anything. He got into his taijutsu stance and prepared to face Itachi once again. Both opponents ran towards each other and clashed in between. Itachi attempted a high roundhouse kick at Naruto. Naruto saw the attack coming and crouched down, dogging Itachi's kick. He spun around and attempted a leg sweep on Itachi. Itachi was too experienced to be caught by something like that. Thus he jumped up to avoid Naruto's leg sweep. While still in flight, Itachi flashed through hand seals, gathering enough chakra for his jutsu. Fire style. Great Fireball. A large fireball expelled from Itachi's mouth and raced down at Naruto, who was still in a crouched position. The flames hit Naruto and consumed him before dying down. Itachi was on alert, knowing that something like that would not put Naruto down despite him firing the jutsu at a close range. He was not disappointed as Naruto charged at him from behind. He quickly spun around to block a kick aimed at his head. Another Naruto appeared behind Itachi and threw a number of shurikens at the Uchiha's back. The Naruto that had attempted to kick Itachi disappeared in a puff of smoke. Itachi realized that it had been just a distraction. He quickly used a replacement technique to avoid the shurikens that were of no doubt doing to pierce his back. A log appeared in his place, taking the hits that were meant for him. Naruto narrowed his eyes searching for Itachi. He did not have to wait long as a bundle of shurikens flew towards him at high speed. Naruto gathered the wind around him and mixed it with his own chakra. Wind release. Wind palm. Gusts of wind sped towards the shurikens. The two attacks met and Naruto's jutsu propelled the shurikens away from Naruto. The gusts of wind continued to make their way towards Itachi, who simply leapt away. Naruto went through a number of hand signs. As he did that, the wind around him turned into at least 20 wind shurikens that were spinning around him. Wind release. Wind shuriken. The wind shurikens sped at the unmoving form of Itachi. He knew that the shurikens were sharp and could leave a few gashes should they hit him. He had seen the attack before, and it would be nasty if he were to be hit. As soon as the wind shurikens got into touching distance with Itachi, he disappeared in a burst of crows. Naruto cancelled his technique and looked to where Itachi had disappeared. Fire release. Phoenix flower. A number of fireballs sped at Naruto. Naruto looked at the fireballs, a few thoughts running through his head. He was trying to run how the scenario would end up. Itachi always often used the jutsu as a distraction and there was always a secondary attack hidden within the flames. Naruto could not really conclude what Itachi was hoping he would do. Naruto shrugged off his thoughts and went through several hand signs. After the hand signs, he clasped his hands together and released a wave of chakra. Sealing art. Chakra barrier. Naruto muttered as a barrier erected around him. The barrier was orange, taking the color of Naruto's chakra. It did not cover a wide area, it did just enough to shield Naruto. The fireballs hit the barrier but were unable to break through the barrier. Itachi sighed slightly and went through a set of hand seals. Fire style. Dragon breath. Itachi expelled a jet stream of hot and intense flames towards Naruto. The flames sped towards Naruto with amazing speed. Naruto just stood unmoving inside his barrier. He was concentrating on keeping his barrier active. Itachi's jutsu crashed into Naruto's barrier. The flames covered Naruto's entire front, trying to break through the barrier. Naruto held on without wavering on his barrier. The barrier strength was determined by the amount of chakra he put on it. If he put more chakra on it, the barrier would be stronger. Naruto called it chakra barrier because nothing that had chakra could penetrate through it, depending on the chakra Naruto put to reinforce it. That did not mean that physical attacks could just pass through it though. With enough physical force it would break. Despite its resistance, the barrier drained too much chakra depending on the kind of attack hit it. Naruto also could not attack because what was inside the barrier stayed inside the barrier and what was outside stayed outside. Naruto also had to concentrate on keeping the barrier active. The flames died down, clearing the path for Naruto to see Itachi. Naruto deactivated the barrier and charged at Itachi. They engaged in a fierce taijutsu battle that ignited sparks around the small training ground. Naruto was faster than Itachi, but Itachi had the Sharingan to predict Naruto's attack. This only made the battle even fierce than it had been as none let their guard down. Punches and kicks were thrown at one another, which were each being either blocked or dodged. Well, that was before Itachi suddenly blurred out of sight and appeared behind Naruto, and positioned a kunai on his neck. Itachi was alarmed when he felt a sudden rise of chakra from Naruto. The Naruto suddenly exploded to gusts of winds. The explosion caught Itachi, giving him multiple cuts on his front and sending him flying away. Itachi recovered quickly and flipped twice before landing on the ground on his feet. The moment he landed, he felt a spike of chakra from Naruto. The said blonde appeared in front of Itachi with a Rasengan on his right hand. Rasengan. Naruto yelled as he tried slamming the Rasengan on Itachi's gut. Itachi was saved by his experience by leaping sideways from the attack. Naruto missed Itachi and his Rasengan slammed the ground, creating an explosion. The explosion was just a testimony to the power of the Rasengan. As the lifted debris cleared, a rather large crater was formed in the middle of the training ground and Naruto was standing still in the middle of the crater, panting slightly. Itachi stood not far away from Naruto, his clothes tattered because of the explosive clone that hit him, but he was otherwise okay if not counting his slightly labored breathing. Okay. I think this is enough. Itachi said, calling the spar to a halt before Naruto destroyed the training ground with his jutsus. Yes, each time the sparred Naruto always destroyed the training ground with his destructive jutsus. Itachi had banned Naruto from using some of his destructive jutsus in the training ground. It was not that he was afraid that someone nearby would sense their chakra. There was a barrier surrounding the hideout. It made it impossible for anyone to sense the chakra inside the barrier. No, he was just tired to having to repair the training ground each time Naruto destroyed it. Naruto nodded and dusted himself. He walked over to a tree and took a meditative pose to relax his body after the spar. It was always good to relax and recover the chakra spent. As Naruto did his meditating, Itachi went back to the house. The following day, Naruto was lying under the tree with eyes closed. He was enjoying the breeze that washed over him. It was not every day that he could relax and not think about training. He could now relax as he was proud of what he has achieved so far on his training. He could relax because of that, but that did not mean he no longer took training seriously. He still trained as hard as he could, breaking a few bones if he could. Itachi walked over to Naruto and sat down beside the blonde with a rather serious look on his face. Naruto had sensed him but did not bother to open his eyes. I want to tell you two important things, Naruto-kun. Itachi said, looking at Naruto. Naruto's eyes snapped open, to look at Itachi, but he never got up, remained as he was. This action was enough to tell Itachi he could speak. The first thing I want to talk to you is about the Akatsuki and my reasons for departure. Itachi stated without a hint of emotion. Naruto looked at Itachi with slightly narrowed eyes. Itachi never spoke about the Akatsuki, neither did he bother to ask. He had always assumed that there was a story behind Itachi's defection from the criminal organization. The Akatsuki no longer exists, Itachi stated bluntly. He did not need to go to Konoha and come back to say it. He was a straightforward person and did not have the patience to go around circles to say something. If Naruto was shocked by the news, he hid it well. The only reaction he gave was a raised eyebrow. Despite not showing it outwardly, the news was a surprise to him. Why? Naruto asked nonchalantly. The leader and the figurehead, Pain of the organization were fighting for the leadership of the organization. Pain did not like where the real leader of the organization was taking things and some of the decision he was making, thus it resulted in a dispute. Itachi paused for a moment. Naruto simply listened on as Itachi spoke. He was truly surprised by the revelation. Never had he thought that Akatsuki had two leaders. The fallout was predictable. The leaders had to be stronger than the rest of the Akatsuki members to lead the organization. It meant that between them, there were some massive egos and each of them would want to assert their superiority over the other. If Pain felt that the real leader was no longer worthy of being leader, he would try to remove him. The dispute resulted in a major battle that took place in Aim, where Akatsuki was based. The battle between the two resulted in half on Omegakure being destroyed. Pain killed the real leader in the battle. Due to the strain caused by the battle on his body, he was left on the verge on death. But before he died he revived everyone in Aim, the leader excluded, who was killed because the battle, Itachi stated. He himself had not seen the battle but he had seen the aftermath. The destruction was unlike anything he had ever seen before. It was beyond what a cage could do. When he had seen the destruction that was in Aim, he could not deny that the figurehead of Akatsuki, Pain, was right when he did say he was a god. The villagers of Aim were correct to call the man a god. He did not believe that the man held such strength, he believed it when he saw the destruction. With the leaders being dead, that would cause the members to disband. Naruto commented seeing how it would end up. Followers followed their leader, and if the leader was no more, then they would follow their own path. Yes. However, some that had become friends chose to remain together to continue their lives as wanted S-rank criminals. Itachi stated, his calm look never fading away. Naruto nodded, so you chose to leave your teammate, leaving the other members to do what they wanted to do, he said. Yes, as I told you I was interested in you, thus I left him and it all ended up here. Itachi replied with a nod. After Naruto had left Konoha with Jiraiya, the choices that were made, led to the events that had occurred. Right now, there are 5 or 6 former Akatsuki members running loose within the elemental nations. Naruto stated. They were to surely run loose around the villages given that they no longer followed orders of Akatsuki. Akatsuki did things professional and hid well their activities, eluding unwanted attention. Now that them no longer with Akatsuki they were to act like loose cannons, doing criminal activities after the other, that is if they not smart. Yes. Now without the Akatsuki, Jinchurikis won't be targeted anymore. Naruto nodded. That was some good news. He would no longer have to worry what the Akatsuki coming after him for the Kyuubi. This meant that all Jinchurikis were now safe. That is some good news, he said. What happened to Amegakure? The figurehead leader of Akatsuki, Pain was the leader of the village after having defeated Hanzo. He had a partner named Konan. From what I know, she has known him since they were just children. She is now the leader of Amegakure. Naruto nodded. What was really the goal of Akatsuki? Naruto asked, wondering why the organization would want with the power of 9 bijus. With that kind of power in the hands of criminals, nothing good would be achieved. Itachi shook his head, even I do not know why bijus were being gathered. Nevertheless, what I do know is that Pain desired peace along with his partner Konan. They wanted peace through the power of all 9 bijus combined. He could never figure out what Madara was planning with the use of the bijus. He had tried everything to find what the man wanted with bijus. Still to this day it is a mystery to him. I wonder what kind of peace the man would have brought with the power of all the bijus, Naruto stated more to himself than to Itachi. It was nothing good, Itachi said. After a few moments of silence he spoke again. The second important thing I want to tell you is a secret that you cannot reveal to anyone. Even I was not supposed to tell anyone, but I feel that you deserve to know the truth. Some of the dark things about Konoha. Itachi stated in a rather serious tone. Naruto got up and leaned against the tree. He looked at Itachi for a moment. Sure they trusted each other, but he did not think that Itachi would go as far as to reveal secrets that he had sworn not to reveal. The secret Itachi wanted to tell him was making him curious as to what it may be. Only 3 people in Konoha know of it. Shimura Danzo, Mitokado Homura and Udatane Kaharu, these 3 are from the council. The Sandaime was aware of the secret by he is dead now. Itachi stated keeping his serious tone. There is no record of it anywhere in Konoha. Naruto now was even more curious than he had been before. It was written all over his face. Itachi was involved with the Sandaime and members of the council. He was curious, very curious. So, not even the Anbu commander, Jiraiya or the Hokage are aware of it. Naruto commented. Itachi nodded. What I am about to tell you is the secret behind the Uchiha massacre. Naruto was now leaning a bit close to Itachi figuratively so that he would not miss a word Itachi was going to say. I did not massacre my clan because I wanted to test my strength or anything. It was because I was ordered to. Itachi revealed. Naruto's eyes widened slightly before they returned to normal after a second of widening. That was the best reaction one could get from Naruto. Why? Naruto asked a question that anyone would have asked after hearing what he had heard. My clan was planning a coup d'état to take over the village. The Sandaime tried peace talks between the village and my clan, but the talk just reached an impasse. I was ordered to massacre my clan to save the village from a civil war that would have destroyed it. Itachi stated impassively. Naruto stared at Itachi for a moment. He could not believe that Konoha would do something like that. Ordering the extermination of the whole clan was just unthinkable. He could not believe that the Sandaime would allow something like that to occur even though the peace talks had reached an impasse. Why did your clan plan a coup d'état? It was because they felt that they were losing power in Konoha. The clan had been secluded from the rest of the village, they also held no real power in Konoha, thus they felt that they were wanted out of the village their former leader had taken part in establishing. Naruto felt like he could understand what they were feeling. The Uchiha clan and the Senju clan were the two clans that formed Konoha. It could be depicted that way since Uchiha Madara, head clan of the Uchiha clan at the time, and Senju Hashirama, leader of the Senju clan, joined hands and formed Konoha. At the time of the massacre, the Uchiha clan were reduced to be nothing but police officers with no real power. They deserved more than what Konoha was offering them. However, regardless of that, planning a coup d'état was not a way to do things. After the Kyuubi's attack on Konoha, the village started to think that the Uchiha clan was behind the attack. With that thought, the Uchiha clan lost trust of the villagers and most tended to avoid clan members. Itachi added. Naruto remembered when Itachi had told him that a Sharingan had been thought to be manipulating the Kyuubi to attack the village. The Sharingan is a dujutsu belonging to the Uchiha clan. It was given that at the thought that the Kyuubi was being manipulated, they would look at the Uchiha clan. It did not help the matter since there was no Uchiha who had turned rogue at the time. Blame would be on the Uchiha clan. Naruto stated. After saying that, a small smile crept to his face, making Itachi raise a brow. Naruto was obviously amused by something. The villagers thought that the Kyuubi was being manipulated by someone. Yet they continued to hate it for the rampage while simultaneously blaming the Uchiha for its rampage. If they believed that it was being controlled by someone, why did they continue to hate it when they believed that it was just a puppet in the whole matter? Naruto stated. They have no standing point, they say it was a puppet and yet they continue to hate it. If they were smart, they would have concluded that the Kyuubi was not to blame for the attack since it was merely being used. Itachi nodded. Not many people saw things the way Naruto did. Even though Konoha thought the Kyuubi was just a puppet, they continued to hate it as if it was its decision to attack. Everyone who saw the Biju attack the village knew that it appeared in a puff of smoke, which meant one thing: it was summoned to Konoha. If it had been a person to have done it, they would not have hated the person as much as they did the Kyuubi. Their minds just could not afford to let the Kyuubi go because it was not human. To them it was a demon of mass destruction that almost destroyed their village, albeit being manipulated to do so per their belief. You are taking this better than I had anticipated. Itachi commented on how Naruto was not judging him for anything. I had my suspicions after getting to understand you. Naruto replied with a shrug. It must have been hard for you to kill your own parents. Naruto stated, eyeing Itachi. Yes, it was. Itachi replied with no hint of emotion on his tone nor his face. Naruto was not expecting any from the stoic Uchiha. Why was Sasuke sparred? I could not kill him. Itachi replied simply. Naruto closed his eyes. He had thought as much. Itachi loved his brother. From what he knew so far, Itachi did not regret taking choice to wipe out his clan. Konoha meant more to him than his own clan. You don't want Sasuke to find out about such information knowing how he might react. And you want him to kill you, avenging your clan while also cleaning the blood of the Uchiha clan on your hands. Naruto stated, getting up, eyes still closed. I will keep it to myself, and thank you for trusting me with such information. He said and walked away from Itachi. He wanted to begin work on a few seals that he had yet to complete. Itachi smiled slightly seeing Naruto walk away. He was glad to have met someone like him. Someone with a kind heart, understanding and trustworthy. Naruto was unlike anyone he had ever seen in his life. He had a kind heart like his father, genius with seals, but there was something that he could not place a finger on that made him different from his father. They were alike in so many ways, but there was something in Naruto that made them different. The Sandaime have been kind of peaceful man during his lifetime, especially during his old age days. But he was nothing like Naruto. There was no one in the world that was like Naruto. He had met many people, but none of them were like Naruto. He was lucky to have seen that and take the boy under him and nurture him to be what he was now. Jiraiya had been a fool by not taking training Naruto seriously. He had no qualms with the man, in fact he respected him. Jiraiya was unlike his fellow Sanins. Jiraiya was a peace-loving man like the Sandaime Hokage, his sensei. However, with Naruto he had turned a blind eye. Itachi had no doubt he would have nurtured the blonde to be a peace-loving person. Itachi could not give himself all the credit for what Naruto was to become. Naruto was a peaceful person by his own right, he had just yet to realize that fact. In regards to training, it was Naruto's determination to become strong that made them achieve so many things in training. He was just a guide, everything else was Naruto. A few days later, Mount Mayuboku, Naruto suddenly found himself transported to another world. It had been early in the morning when that happened. He looked around where he was and recognized that it was Fukasaku's house. He had been summoned here before when he had requested to be taught senjutsu. Naruto looked around house and saw Fukasaku and Shima looking at him. I was thinking you might no longer call me Fukasaku-sama. Naruto stated looking at the toad sage. Ma and I just had a lot of thought about it. Fukasaku said with a smile. We have decided to train you in senjutsu. Ma will not be doing anything, I will teach you. He said. Naruto smiled slightly at the news. Though the smile quickly disappeared as if it was never there. That is pleasing to know. He said. Pa, I will go get some food for Naruto-chan. He has to taste my delicious food before he begins his training. Shima said looking at her husband. Fukasaku just nodded, he did not want to deal with his wife now. Naruto was more important. Follow me Naruto-chan. Naruto crouched out of the small house and followed Fukasaku. They went to a clearing, which had statues of large toads. Naruto just walked over enjoying the cool breeze that washed over him. The air around him was enjoyable and not the same as the air he breathed at the hideout. The air at Village of the Toads felt natural. Fukasaku ordered Naruto to sit down while he stood staring at the blonde with a serious look on his face. Before I even begin to teach you senjutsu, you have to know the risks. He said, making Naruto raise a brow. Learning senjutsu requires you to absorb chakra from nature and balance it with your own physical and spiritual energy. The chakra you absorb from nature is extremely powerful. Absorbing too much of the chakra or not having too much control of the chakra will turn you into one of those. He said, pointing at the statues that seemed to decorate the area. Naruto was certainly not expecting something like that to be as the risk of learning senjutsu. Itachi had said senjutsu was powerful. Naruto now could conclude that nothing of great power did not come easy to achieve. Nevertheless, for great power to be achieved, one had to deal with the risks. Do you still want to train even when knowing that you can die? Fukasaku asked. Yes. I have never been the one to back down from anything. Naruto replied with a small smile, recalling his old self. Fukasaku smiled. I thought you might say something like that. He then instructed Naruto to sit beside a waterfall. That was what Naruto thought, but it was not actually water that was flowing but oil. To be able to absorb natural energy, you must be able to be one with nature, feel nature, hear nature. He said as Naruto took a meditative pose. Getting in touch with nature should be easy for given that you meditate a lot. He said, is it possible to train somewhere else in the elemental nations other than here? Naruto asked. Fukasaku nodded, yes. However, due to the risks you have to train here. This oil helps you to absorb nature chakra easily. It is only found here and cannot be found anywhere. He said the poured the oil on Naruto. When you absorb too much chakra, I will hit you with this. He said as a black stick suddenly appeared on his hand. This stick will force natural chakra out of your body when the process of purification begins. With those things said, Naruto began his senjutsu training with the Toad Sage. Fukasaku wanted Naruto to begin as soon as possible so he could perfect the training before he has to return to Konoha. Jiraiya had never perfected the training, even when it had taken a year to train. In fact, the Toad had concluded that it was impossible for the Sannin. It would explain why Jiraiya had never bothered coming back to Mayubokuzen to perfect the training. Jiraiya could not enter Sage Mode on his own, which made his Sage Mode imperfect. Naruto was different from Jiraiya. Naruto had more chakra than Jiraiya did when he learned Senjutsu. To be able to perfect Senjutsu, you had to have large amounts of chakra reserves that Naruto had. That day, it was already noon and Itachi had yet to see Naruto. It was unlike Naruto to disappear without a warning. Mostly if he did go somewhere, it would be at the Valley of the End to meditate. He never left without saying a word. Not that Itachi was worried for the blonde. He knew that Naruto could take care of himself. Burying himself in his thoughts, Itachi decided to just wait and see. A toad appeared in a puff of smoke in the middle of the training. It was big as him. He quickly recognized the toad as Gamakichi. Naruto usually summoned the toad to give a report on how he was doing, and how far he was progressing with his training. Gamakichi saw Itachi sitting comfortably under a tree and jumped over to him. I was sent to tell you that Naruto was reverse summoned to Mount Mayuboku. He won't be returning for a while now. The elders have agreed to teach him Senjutsu. Gamakichi said and then disappeared in a puff of smoke. He did not like staring at the eyes Sharingan of Itachi. It unnerved, the man never smiled. He would come back later during the day and fetch the things Naruto had requested. Naruto had requested that the elders teach him Senjutsu after Itachi had told him that Jiraiya used Senjutsu and was very powerful when using Senjutsu. Naruto had made the request about a month ago, seeing that there was nothing else Itachi could teach him. What was left was just to perfect his jutsu arsenal and fuinjutsu. It should take him a couple of months to learn Senjutsu. Itachi thought to himself. He would have the whole time to himself, to do other things with Naruto gone. It had been over 2 years since he left the area close to the hideout. He had always stayed there, as he did not need anything to outside the hideout. He could go outside to see what villages have been up to and what his former Akatsuki comrades were doing with their time. A month and a half later, Naruto appeared at the Uchiha hideout in a puff of smoke. He had completed his Senjutsu training far faster than Fukasaku had anticipated. Even Shima was surprised. The two great Toad sages were very surprised given that Jiraiya learned Senjutsu for over a year and was still unable to perfect it. But Naruto was able to perfect his Sage Mode under a month. He stayed at the land of the Toads to train more in wind manipulation and seals. The atmosphere at Mount Mayuboku was perfect for him to train further his control over the wind element. Naruto walked calmly towards the house. Training at the land of the Toads had been rather harsh to his body, but it was nothing he was not used to. His body had worked overtime, right now he just needed to rest. Itachi raised a brow upon seeing Naruto. I took little time than I had anticipated. Itachi stated. That is what the Toads said. Naruto replied. I'm going to rest, he said and walked to his room. Itachi raised another brow. It must have been a harsh training he had gone through to look for rest after just returning. 2 days later, Naruto sat comfortably under a tree doing nothing in particular. He had rested enough. Right now he was just resting his mind for a bit. It had worked overtime while he was at Mount Mayuboku. His body had rested physically, but for his mind to compute at its full potential he needed to allow it to rest a bit more before going back to working it overtime again. Itachi walked over to Naruto holding a small storage scroll. Naruto noticed the Uchiha's presence and looked up to him. I have something to give you, Naruto-kun, Itachi stated. I collected it while you were gone. he said, handing over the scroll he held to Naruto. Naruto took the scroll and opened it. He channeled chakra on the seal to summon whatever that was sealed inside the scroll. In a puff of smoke, a sword appeared in a sheath. It was not just any sword, it was a sword sparkling with electricity. It was the sword of the flying thunder god, the blade of the Nadaime Hokage. Naruto looked at Itachi with the blade firmly on his hands. He had the widest smile Itachi had ever seen from the blonde. Naruto was happy. No, he was overjoyed by what Itachi had given him. He felt happy more than the time Iruka gave him his headband. The sword was his first gift given to him by someone else. He could not count the necklace Tsunade gave him as he had won it over their bet. He opened his mouth and said 3 words that almost made the stoic Uchiha Itachi give a foxy grin. A lone figure walked calmly towards the large gates of the village hidden in leaves. He was wearing a long red short-sleeved coat with flame patterns at the gemline and high collars. At the back of the coat, there was a kanji for Toad Sage. Beneath the coat he wore black shinobi pants, short-sleeved black shirt, black shinobi boots and black fingerless gloves. He wore a metal plate as an armor on his chest. A sword was strapped on his back. His attire was complemented with a straw hat that hid his face. Azumo Kamizuki and Katetsu Hagane, the 2 eternal gate guards, were having a rather boring day. There had been no visitor for the day. The people that had been entering the village were a few teams that were returning from their missions. They liked it when new people came into the village for touring or just visiting. Azumo, there is someone coming. Katetsu said, looking at the lone figure heading towards the gates. "Yay, I can see him," Azumo replied. "Who do you think it might be?" "I don't know. Haven't seen anyone wearing something like that before," Azumo replied with a shrug. The figure walked closer to the gates, making the 2 guards to stand up as they waited for him to arrive. He was walking at a rather slow pace, like he was in no hurry. "Halt," Katetsu said in a rather loud and commanding voice. "State your business." Azumo commanded the other part of their normal sequence for when someone new enters the village. Returning, the figure replied simply. "State your name." The figure lifted up his straw hat, revealing his face. He had spiky blonde hair, deep blue eyes. His hair framed both sides of his face. "Naruto Namikaze," he said, placing back his hat. The 2 Chunin guards widened their eyes upon the mention of the name. Without the whisker marks, they would have said it was the Yondaime Hokage. Naruto looked exactly like the Yondaime. If someone was to say that he was the Yondaime, they would not have denied the claim. At the same time, they were happy that Naruto had returned to the village. It had been 3 long years since they last saw him. They had missed seeing him grinning like a fox and shouting something about being great and surpassing someone. Katetsu was the first to get out of his stupor. "Naruto, it's good to see you again," he said with a genuine smile. "The village has never been the same without you." "Hey Katetsu, did I hear correctly?" he said. "Namikaze Naruto, right?" Azumo asked after Naruto had walked away from the 2. "Huh, you were not listening. He did not say Uzumaki Naruto. He said Namikaze Naruto. Is he related to the Yondaime Hokage?" "I don't know. But with the way he looks, I would not disagree if someone said he was the Yondaime's son." Naruto walked past the 2 Chunin guards. He was in no hurry to report to the Hokage that he had returned. He just wanted to see how the village was. He never cared for information on the events occurring within the village while he was training. As he walked around the streets of Konoha, several villagers were staring at him, trying to figure who he was. The whispers began to resonate around as he walked. Naruto looked around Konoha. It was still the same as it was when he left. Nothing had changed, the air was still the same. The villagers were still smiling and gossiping in groups like they always did when he was not walking around. Konoha was still the same lively place as it had been when he left. He could see that the village recovered well after the sound invasion. It was his home. He loved Konoha, despite its treatment towards him. The village was his home and nothing would change that. He was born here and he would be buried within the village. Naruto looked at the Hokage monument. It had been his favorite spot when he was younger. The place gave him a sense of peace since when he was there no one would be staring at him with hateful glares. It was his comfort zone. Looking at the faces of the Hokages, Naruto could not help but smile slightly. The past 4 Kages had been great Hokages, both in power and mind. The Nadaime, Sandaime and Yondaime, all died protecting the village. That was a mark of a Kage. Laying your life for the sake of the village which you lead, and have sworn to protect. Konoha has been truly blessed to have had such great leaders as the 5 at the Hokage monument. The Shinobi was hailed as the god of Shinobi for his power. The man was powerful indeed, yet a peace-loving person. The Shinobi tried to unite the world during his time, but his attempts failed miserably. He tried making the villages equals by capturing bijus and handing over to them. He had hopes that if each village had a biju it would stabilize things and each villager would see other as equal. However, that never occurred as villagers saw each other as nothing but rivals. The Nadaime Hokage, Senju Tobirama. He was the brother to Senju Hashirama, the Shinobi Hokage. The Nadaime was a serious man and took no nonsense. He was the best manipulator of water element. He was the only person to be able to create water from air molecules. The Nadaime was a powerful man, but not as powerful as his brother. He died during the Second Shinobi World War, killed by the Gold and Silver Brothers of Kumo. The Sandaime Hokage. He was referred to as the Professor, being that he knew every jutsu in Konoha and was able to perform it at a high level. He was trained by both Hashirama and Tobirama. The Sandaime was wise and a peace-loving man. He survived 2 wars, and was the only Hokage to have served 2 terms. He died in the hands of his own student, Snake Sanin Orochimaru. His death was noble as he died fighting for the village during the Sound invasion. The Yondaime Hokage, Minato Namikaze, probably the most famous out of all the Hokages despite being Hokage for a short period of time. Minato is known all over the elemental nations as Konoha's Yellow Flash. He made his name known during the Third Great Shinobi World War. He was the man responsible for Iwa's loss in the war, which is why even after a decade of his death the village still hates him. Minato was a genius and a seal master. He was the best seal master that Konoha had ever seen. Sadly, despite achieving so much, he died while still being relatively young. His death was also noble as he died sealing the Kyuubi inside his own son. Sealing the Kyuubi inside of his own son was because the said Biju had gone on a rampage and began to destroy Konoha. No one could fight the almighty Kyuubi, thus the only way to defeat it was to seal it. Today Konoha sees him as her greatest hero. Now there is Senju Tsunade, the Godime Hokage. She also has fame and a name that carries weight being that she is one of the 3 legendary shinobi. She is also renowned for the skills in medical ninjutsu and is the best medical nin in all the elemental nations. She was doing a steady job as Hokage. Naruto could agree with that. Naruto looked around to see that he was generating a lot of unwanted attention. Villagers were just staring at him as he walked around. He could also sense that ANBUs were watching him. The fact that they were just watching him meant that the gate guards had yet to inform anyone of his presence within the village. But it was just a matter of time before they did and Tsunade would send her Anbu to come and fetch him. With a sigh, Naruto blurred out of sight making everyone who was looking at him look at him to see where he had went. His way of disappearing was nothing flashy. He just disappeared like he was never there to begin with. When the villagers saw that they could no longer see him they just shrugged and went back to what they were doing. Hokage Monument. Naruto looked at the peaceful image of Konohagakure no Sato. This peaceful village was a village that his mother and father died protecting. It is a village he had been protecting from the day he was born. Konoha had just yet to be aware of that fact. The Namikaze family have given everything for this village. His father died in the sealing of the Kyuubi. His mother had been a Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi since her younger days. Both were heroes. Konoha is what is today because of their sacrifice. Had they not made the sacrifice they made, Konoha would have burned down to the ground since there would have been no one powerful enough to stop the Kyuubi. This peace, this sense of security that Konoha now has was because of his family. Even he, who was made a human sacrifice to contain the Kyuubi, had done just as much as his parents did. Had it not been for his mental stability, the Kyuubi would have broken out of the seal and finished what it started. But he held on, despite being a social outcast. His mind remained stable and he held the Kyuubi back in its cage. Konoha was safe because of his life. Uzumaki and Namikaze, both have sacrificed more than anyone within the village. All Uzumaki to have lived within the village were Jinchurikis. They were made to bear the beast of hatred within them. Today, he, being the last Uzumaki in Konoha and possibly the world, carries the Kyuubi within him, following the path of his predecessors. Being Uzumaki, he also had Namikaze blood flowing in his body. His father, the only known Namikaze before him, had been the leader of the village, and died being the leader of the village. With all the sacrifices and the pain and loneliness he has had to endure, it would be a shame to allow all that to be for nothing by not stepping up as the protector of the village. He was born to be a protector of Konoha, guardian of the village, and he would take on that mantle proudly. It was his place to ensure that Konoha was safe, and in peace, as a Namikaze, Uzumaki and third Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. Naruto let loose of a sigh as he sensed several chakra signatures coming his way. He figured Tsunade must have been alerted of his return to the village. Anbu would just try to assert their authority over him. He had no doubt they would try to take him to the Hokage's office by force, even if he said he wanted to see the village a bit more. With that in mind, Naruto disappeared from the Hokage's monument. Naruto looked at the tallest building in Konoha, the Hokage's tower. Cages of each village always stayed at the tallest tower within a village. It made it easy to target them, not that anyone would be stupid enough to attack them given that they are the strongest in the village they led. Naruto entered the Hokage's tower, still wearing his straw hat. He just decided to walk as it had been long since he breathed the air inside the tower. Today was still the day of his return. In the next few days he would have seen everything inside the village. Naruto bumped into someone after passing by a corner. He had been engrossed with his thoughts that he did not sense anyone. The person who hit him fell back because Naruto had stood still like a wall. But his hat was knocked off his head. Naruto leaned down to pick it up before looking at the person who bumped into him. It was a light-skinned woman, with long, shoulder-length untamed black hair. He had unique red eyes. By her dress and eyes, Naruto quickly recognized the woman as Team 8's sensei, Yuhi Kurenai. Sorry about that, Naruto said, stretching out his arm to help her get up. Kurenai just stared at Naruto for a few moments. She would have screamed Yondaime-sama if it were for the fact that the Yondaime was a dead man. Naruto, Kurenai said in a whisper as she took Naruto's hand. His grip was firm as she took his hand. Naruto nodded slightly before placing his hat back to its rightful place. Kurenai continued to examine Naruto's appearance. He had grown wonderfully well, since she last saw him. Naruto began to walk forward, passing the woman. Kurenai realized that she was staring when Naruto walked past her. She turned around to see him before disappear past a corner. A thought came into her mind as she realized that Naruto had been missing from the village for 3 years now. Hinata will be so happy when she finds out about this. Kurenai thought, knowing about the Hyuga heir's infatuation with Naruto. Although it does seem like she will have some competition. Another thought crept into her mind. Kurenai shrugged off her thoughts before she could think of how handsome he looked. She turned around and walked away. Naruto walked past the receptionist without saying a word to the woman. Tsunade was expecting him, thus there was no need to check in with her if he could enter the office. Unfortunately, the young lady did not have the same thoughts with him. Hey, you can't just walk in there. She yelled out. The Godime is expecting me. Naruto replied without turning back to look at the young lady. I don't know that. Before you go inside the Hokage's office you must check with me if she's free or not. This time the receptionist was now standing up. Naruto continued to walk away from the woman. She was rather loud, he had enough of loud females. Sakura was already enough, he did not another one. Hokage's office. Naruto knocked into the office of the Godime Hokage. He stood patiently waiting for an answer. Enter. A voice responded behind the door. Naruto entered the office and stood still. There were 3 people inside the office. He took off his straw hat, allowing the people to see his face. Jiraiya, Tsunade and Shizune could only stare at the figure in front of them with wide eyes. Naruto had really grown, and his body was built well. All that baby fat on his face was gone, and the deep blue eyes and shoulder-length spiky blonde hair made him look like the Yondaime Hokage. Clothes he wore were not something they had expected him to be wearing. All 3 were expecting to see orange, but there was none of it. What was standing in front of them was a true shinobi. They had been expecting him, after the gate guards alerted them of his presence within the village. Tsunade had immediately instructed an Anbu squad to go look for him. Naruto eyed Jiraiya. He had expected the man to be in Konoha given that he was due to return today. Jiraiya would be eager to see him after he had abandoned the Sannin. I have returned from my training trip, Tsunade-sama. Naruto stated, looking straight at Tsunade. That was a shocker. His words had not mock respect, no sarcasm, they were just respectful and his tone was down and calm. Naruto had never addressed Tsunade as Tsunade-sama, it was always, Ba-chan, or, old hag. The room was met with silence before Tsunade exploded, shrugging off the fact that Naruto had addressed her name with Sama. She rose up from her chair behind her desk and slammed both her hands to her desk, giving it cracks. Her reaction caused the other 2 in the room to tense. What were you thinking running away from Jiraiya? Did you forget that the Akatsuki were after you? What if something might have happened to you after your little stunt? That was a stupid thing for you to do, Naruto. Tsunade ranted out, anger clear in her voice. Do you know what you put me through after Jiraiya told me that you had abandoned him? Do you know many drinks I drank after I learned of your stunt? Not that she regretted the drinks she had, I was very worried about you and your safety. She was not coming down as she continued to yell at the blonde. Naruto, however, remained as he was, as if her anger was nothing to him. He did not tense or flinch at the tone of her voice or anger. He just continued looking straight at her. I am going to make you pay for making me worry about you. Tsunade yelled as she shot towards Naruto like a bullet. She appeared in front of him with a chakra-enhanced fist speeding towards his face. Both Jiraiya and Shizune tensed, knowing that it was not going to end pretty for Naruto. No one dodged Tsunade's punches. Well, not because they could not, but because she was the Hokage and dodging them would only infuriate her further. An infuriated Tsunade was not someone you wanted to deal with. When Tsunade's fist was just an inch away from Naruto's face, he sidestepped at a rather fast speed. He had his left hand stretched out, it was placed of Tsunade's large bust. Naruto had avoided trying to block the attack, knowing how powerful Tsunade's punches were. His hand on Tsunade's bust was for support so that the woman did not hit the ground to her momentum. Shizune and Jiraiya were shocked to see Naruto dodge Tsunade's punch. One who was shocked more was Tsunade. At the speed she appeared in front of him, she was not expecting him to dodge. Also, Naruto had never tried to dodge her punches. Jiraiya then noticed where Naruto's hand was placed. He grinned perversely, lucky brat, I have never gone that far. Jiraiya muttered under his breath. Everybody heard his words. Jiraiya's words snapped Tsunade out of her thoughts. She realized that Naruto's hand was on her bust. It was supporting her so she could not fall, thus she could feel it well on her bust. She looked at Naruto, who had a slightly amused expression on his face. Tsunade had the decency to blush as she realized the situation she was in. She quickly got her bearings and walked away from Naruto without another word. She went back to sit on her chair behind her desk. She opened a drawer and took out a bottle of sake before downing it. Naruto raised a brow when he felt a pair of eyes staring at him. He looked to see Shizune staring at him as if she was lost in her own world of imaginations. Shizune realized she was caught staring and looked down. Whether from embarrassment at being caught staring or she was just hiding something. Nobody could really tell why. Hello Naruto-kun, she managed to say, her eyes going back to Naruto. Shizune, how have been over the past 3 years? Naruto said. Well, just a lot of stressing work. I have no complaints. Naruto replied, his tone calm and reserved. Tsunade cleared her throat to get everyone's attention. She eyed Naruto carefully. He had definitely changed. He was no longer the Naruto she knew. This Naruto was totally different from the Naruto she knew. Putting it accurately, she could say she was the opposite of the Naruto she knew. Naruto, it's not that I'm not happy to see, but you have some explaining to do. Tsunade stated in a serious tone. Jiraiya nodded, agreeing with Tsunade. Naruto had a lot of explaining to do. They all looked at Naruto waiting for him to speak. Explain what exactly, Tsunade-sama? Naruto asked. Why you ran away from Jiraiya? What were you even thinking when you did? Tsunade asked with a fierce glare that would make anyone flinch. Naruto looked at Jiraiya for a moment before looking back at Tsunade. I did not run away. I simply left him to clear my head and get some training. Naruto replied calmly. What do you mean you left him to clear your head and get some training? Tsunade asked, glaring at Naruto. The reason she had allowed Jiraiya to take Naruto out of the village for the training trip was because she wanted him to clear his mind and get trained by Jiraiya. With all due respect, but I thought my words were simple enough for you to understand. Naruto said, seeing as there was no reason to explain his statement. Naruto, Tsunade barked, intensifying her glare. She leaked some of her killing intent. Shizune had to step away from her master when she started leaking the killing intent. Tell me why you ran away from Jiraiya. Now, Tsunade stated in a tone of authority, showing Naruto that she was the Hokage. Naruto shrugged off Tsunade's killing intent. He could handle worse than the blonde Hokage was giving off. As I said, I left Jiraiya because I wanted to get some training done and become strong. Before Tsunade could respond, Jiraiya spoke. Did you have to leave me? I could have trained you to become strong. I am a Sannin after all, he said with narrowed eyes. Tsunade chose not to say anything. She wanted Naruto to respond to Jiraiya's question. Yes, Naruto replied. You might be a Sannin, but you could have never given me the training I required. To you I would have been third to everything you could do. The first had to be your research, the second had to be your spy network. Am I correct, Jiraiya? Jiraiya was surprised that Naruto did not call him Ero Sennin. It has always been what Naruto called him ever since their meeting at the hot springs. Naruto had also called him without the respect suffix. Getting over his surprise, Naruto's words began to sink in his head. Tsunade narrowed her eyes at Jiraiya, who shifted nervously upon seeing the look she was giving him. Respond to his words, Jiraiya. She barked at the Sannin. No. You know I would have trained him. I was the one who asked to take him on the training trip after all. Jiraiya defended himself. Jiraiya, you were going to correct some flaws in my taijutsu, help me with chakra control and teach me how to control the Kyuubi's chakra for all 3 years. Correct me if I am wrong. Naruto stated, giving Jiraiya an impassive look. Tsunade glared at Jiraiya. Well. Jiraiya scratched the back of his head, smiling nervously. You see. If he was being honest, that was all he had planned on teaching Naruto, added with a few variations of the Rasengan. Jiraiya, I cannot believe that you were going to waste all 3 years teaching him only those things. You damn pervert, I trusted you with him to make him strong. Tsunade yelled, throwing a stack of papers at Jiraiya. Tsunade-sama, you shouldn't. Whatever Shizune was going to say, she could not finish as Tsunade sent her a glare to shut her up. Your reasons might have been justifiable. But you should not have ran away from Jiraiya. Did you ever pause to think what your friends, what I would think if something was to happen to you because of your foolish decision. Tsunade asked, not happy with Naruto's choice. She would deal with Jiraiya later, but Naruto needed to know the consequences of his actions. No, Naruto replied. It was the truth. He did not think of anyone when he made the choice to abandon Jiraiya. He was only thinking about himself, not anyone else. Single quote dot 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 single quote single quote single quote dot 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 single quote single quote dot 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 single quote. All three just stared at Naruto. That was something neither had ever thought they would hear from Naruto. Naruto had always put everyone ahead of him when he made his choices. It was safe to say that the blonde lived for other people, discarding his own needs. You are telling me that you just ran away from Jiraiya without thinking of how those who care for you would feel? Tsunade yelled, losing her calm look. Yes, Naruto replied. For the first time I placed myself ahead and did what was best for me. Was that so wrong to do? Tsunade was taken aback by his question. She had never expected him to say something like that. No, she replied, losing her anger. But that does not excuse you for running away from Jiraiya. Naruto said nothing. Where did you even go after you left Jiraiya? What did you even do? Tsunade asked. I'm afraid I cannot answer that question, Tsunade-sama. Naruto stated. Naruto, Jiraiya said, his face taking a rare serious expression on his face. You are going to tell us where you have been for past 3 years. That is not a request. Naruto shook his head, order or not. I cannot answer your question. Tsunade slammed her fists on her desk, cracking it. Another hit and it was going to break. Listen here, brat. You are going to tell me where you have been over the past 3 years. I might have let you off the hook in the past, but this is serious. You will tell me what I want to know or I will make you. Do you understand me? Tsunade yelled with a hardened glare at Naruto. She increased her killing intent to a new high to show the blonde that she was dead serious. The temperature became tense in the office because of Tsunade's killing intent. The killing intent was enough to make Jiraiya sweat bullets and Shizune find it difficult to breathe. To the surprise of Tsunade, Naruto was unaffected by her killing intent. He did not even flinch or tense. He simply just shrugged it off like it was nothing. All you need to know is that I was at a safe place and I trained to the level 1 wanted. Naruto replied, his tone unwavering. Tsunade stared at Naruto for a minute before she sighed and stopped leaking her killing intent. Naruto was not going to answer her question no matter what she did. The look on his face told her that much. Fine, she said in a defeated tone. At least give me a report on what you trained in. Naruto unsheathed his sword, showing it the occupants in the room. Their eyes widened, recognizing the blade. Rajian no Ken, the sword of the thunder god. Jiraiya muttered, looking at the sword. Naruto placed the sword back to its sheath. Where did you get it? Tsunade asked, knowing that the sword had been missing from Konoha. From Aoi Rokusho, Naruto replied. It was the half-truth since he was not to took the sword from Aoi. He could not tell them that it was Itachi who gave it to him. I trained in Kenjutsu and other shinobi arts. Naruto stated. Now, I believe that is all now. If you need anything from me, I will be at my father's house. I was nice seeing you again, Tsunade-sama, Shizune. Naruto stated with a small smile before he disappeared in bright yellow flash. Single quote dot 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 single quote. Jiraiya, did he just say, my father's house? Tsunade asked, staring at the spot Naruto had been standing. Yes, he did, Harem. Jiraiya replied with a dumb expression on his face. Harem, did he just disappear in a yellow flash? He asked. Yes, he did, Jiraiya. Tsunade replied with a dumb look on her face. Shizune just watched the two converse in a comical fashion. The expressions of their face were priceless. Had it not been for the implications of the revelations, she would have been rolling on the floor, killing herself in laughter. A few seconds later, The house of the Yondaime Hokage, not what Naruto had expected from the house of the most famous Hokage to have ever existed in the village hidden in leaves. He had expected to see a large house worthy and fitting for Konoha's yellow flash, the man who brought the arrogant Iwagakure to her knees. He was expecting to see something exquisite, but what he found was just a normal house. The house was perfect for a normal family. No one would really guess that the Hokage of Konohagakure lived within the house. Naruto had smiled upon taking a look at the house he had inherited from his parents. It was just a symbol of how humble and simple his parents were. Many who could have been in his father's shoes would have opted for something big and standing out of all the houses in Konoha. But not his parents. Some would have even lived in house big as the Hokage's tower just so people could see that they stood out of everyone in the village. But again, not his parents. Perhaps his parents had made a small home so not to attract too much attention from people. Perhaps that was the case. However, thinking of that, they would not worry about anything since they had Anbu to protect them 24/7. No one would have really attempted to take on the strongest man in Konoha. Regardless of their reasons, the house was perfect for him. Sighing, Naruto disappeared in a yellow flash after having located a Hiraishin seal within the house. He appeared in a room that had a large bed, a really large bed. It was definitely his parents' bedroom. There was no doubt that it was the main bedroom. By just looking at the setting of the room, Naruto deduced that much. The room was still in perfect condition. Perhaps the Sandaime had some trusted people to look after the house while he was still alive. That would explain why the room was in good condition. He could take a nap without having to worry about insects jumping on him and taking a bite. That was just how the room was. Perhaps it was the seals that banished anything that might have attempted to eat the house inside out. Anything by now was just assumptions. Not that it mattered anyway. The house was his. There was no one who would dispute that. A clip invaded Naruto's head. It was him in his younger days. He saw himself busting inside the room, catching his father doing something to his mother. And then he screamed, "To-san. What are you doing to Ka-chan?" Both his parents just flushed red in embarrassment before hiding under their blankets. It would be been a funny memory had it been real. It would also be amusing to see how his father would try to explain what he had just seen. Minato Namikaze would definitely be unable to explain himself. Naruto shook his head, deleting the clip. Amusing as it was, having those thoughts was not going to do him any good. Naruto sat on the bed and shifted his eyes around the room. He smiled sadly seeing the portraits that were hung on the wall within the room. The portraits were truly beautiful. He would not mind gazing on them for a full day. His parents seemed to be truly happy together. They seemed perfect for each other. There was no doubt about that within his head. Naruto's eyes trained on the one that his mother was still pregnant with him. The smiles on both their faces made him shed a tear. He could only guess how happy they must have been knowing that they were expecting their first child. By just looking at the portrait, he could only say, really happy. They must have waited patiently for his birth, so that they could see their first product, their joy. A pity they never got the chance to live with him after his birth. They never got to hear his first words or hear him call them, Ka-chan, and, To-san. Death had taken them away from their beloved the day he was born. The world had a funny way of operating. Naruto took his time exploring the house further. He looked at each room that was in the house without missing any. He did not send clones to do it for him, he wanted to do it himself. He wanted to see it with his own eyes, even though the clones' experiences would be brought back to him. The better choice was to do it himself. The house was perfect for him. He could not explain why, but it just was. He felt home, free. Perhaps it was because it was his parents' house and he had lived inside the house while he was still inside his mother's womb. The house had 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a kitchen, sitting room, library and a basement. The basement was used as a store room for storing weapons amongst other things. The library was full of scrolls and also functioned as his father's home office, judging from the chair and desk just beside the window away from the shelves. Naruto had sat down behind the desk and made himself comfortable. The chair felt like it was made just for him, like it was made with him in mind. He looked around the library and marveled at the sheer number of scrolls and books. He doubted he would ever go through all of them anytime soon. He even wondered if his parents had even read everything in the library. Perhaps they had stored their knowledge and other people's knowledge for him. He would certainly save some scrolls for his own children, especially since he was planning to write his own book. He wanted to write his own book in Fuinjutsu, perhaps another about his life. Fuinjutsu would come first though. He was a master in the art, it was his duty to share the knowledge he had with those who sought for it. Also, teaching Fuinjutsu was his duty. The Uzumaki clan was known for being masters in the art of sealing. Right now, it was his duty to continue with that tradition. He was already a seal master. Not that he bragged about it, it was just the truth. A room that had made him shed a few tears was the room with a crib inside. Without any doubt, it was the room that was built for him. The crib was made for him. It was the room at which he was supposed to have had nightmares in. He was supposed to let loose of unwanted water inside his body while he was sleeping peacefully inside the crib. A pity he never got the chance to rest on it. Instead, he had a cold and lonely bed at the orphanage. He would have wished just for once to enjoy the comfort of the bed his parents had prepared for him. They had made it, but never got the chance to watch him fall asleep inside the little bed they had made. If he could fit inside the crib, Naruto would have jumped inside and taken a nap. But he was not, he could only enjoy the comfort with his own hands and thoughts. One thing was certain though, he was going to leave the room as it was. Nothing would be changed from the room. Perhaps his own children will enjoy the comfort he never got the chance to enjoy. What was to be done in the room was cleaning. Speaking of cleaning, Taju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, he breathed out and 20 identical copies of himself popped up into existence. Naruto gave them the orders to clean the house. His clones could do the trivial stuff for him. Naruto himself decided to go to the library, study. He wanted to do everything in the library by himself. Complex Fuinjutsu. Naruto looked at the words and nodded to himself. He had fixed and put everything in place within the library. It had taken him a few hours to do so, but he never complained. In fact, he enjoyed doing the work. In a few hours, day will be making way for night. Naruto had decided to use this few hours before night to begin some writing. He wanted to get some writing done. The clones he had made were still busy doing their chores. They had managed to stay long thanks to the chakra he had given them. One had been sent to buy some groceries since the house had no food, given that no one had been taking refuge in it. The clone he had sent was hanged as he did not want to come across any of his friends. He would see them tomorrow. Today he had to make himself comfortable before announcing his return to his friends. Without any more thoughts, Naruto began to write his book for Fuinjutsu masters. He, being a master, thought it'd be best to write about some complex seals. He doubted that there was anyone in Konoha who would better him in the art of sealing. Perhaps his talent came from the fact that he had Uzumaki genes running through his body. It was natural for any Uzumaki to be a master in Fuinjutsu, so there was no surprise there. Also, his father had been a genius in seals, perhaps some of that talent was transferred to him. Either way, he was a fine seal master and was not afraid to say it loud. The first seal he explained in detail was the Hake no Fuin Shiki. The seal that his father used to seal the Kyuubi within him. Naruto had taken much time to study the seal in detail. He understands everything about it, even the minor details. When he studied the seal by examining the one on his stomach, he found out that Minato had created a key to unlock the seal. The key could either remove the seal or open the gate to the Kyuubi's cage. Naruto understood that his father had intended for him to use the Kyuubi's chakra. After having completed the detailed description of the 8 trigrams sealing style, Naruto began to make notes for another book. This one he called, The Journey of a Hero. He just made a few notes only. He would continue to gather material as he continues to write complex fuinjutsu. If someone had said he would be interested in literature in his genin days, he would not have even laughed. He hated reading or writing those days. Even his handwriting was horrible. At least these days it had improved because he was constantly writing something. Naruto sighed annoyingly. How long are you going to watch me? He said seemingly to no one. Jiraiya stepped out of the corner of the study with a sheepish grin. You have improved your sensing abilities, he said. In your genin days you would have remained oblivious to my presence until I got tired of hiding, he said with an awkward chuckle. It was not every day that someone caught him while he was hiding. Naruto deserved praise for having noticed his presence. Those years I was an idiot trying to play Shinobi. All I had was just large amounts of chakra and a mountain-tall biju sealed within me, Naruto said leaning back to his chair. He stared at Jiraiya with a blank expression making the Sannin swallow whatever that he was chewing. Don't say that. I gave you some skills when I trained you. Naruto shook his head making Jiraiya look at him questionably. You cannot give anyone skills, Jiraiya. A skill is not something you can just hand over. Some people are born with skills while some attain skills through sheer dedication to training. He paused for a moment. You as a teacher help recognize the skills and improve those skills. Jiraiya made to note that Naruto was not the same idiot as he was. He sounded smart. In my case you helped me improve what I had so that I could survive the Chunin exams. Truthfully, had it not been for you I would have flopped. Jiraiya beamed at Naruto's words. He wanted to add that he had improved Naruto's skills and made him perform well at the Chunin exams because he was the greatest sensei of all time. But Naruto's next words had him kissing the floor. Regardless of how grateful I am for your help, I cannot regard you as a good teacher given the fact that you pushed me inside a deep hole just to see if I could use the Kyuubi's power. If the Kyuubi was suicidal I would have died or ended up with a broken body, Naruto said with a straight face, eyes still looking at Jiraiya. You hurt me with your words, Naruto, Jiraiya said rather childishly. But you have to agree my method did give good results. You ended up summoning Gamabunta with the Kyuubi's power. The Sannin pointed out. Despite his method being risky, it gave satisfactory results. Yes it did, Naruto conceded. Silence took its part in the room. Naruto was still staring at Jiraiya with an unreadable expression on his face. The look on Naruto's face was really making the Sannin nervous. The old Naruto would have been just looking at him with a goofy smile and wide eyes. Finally Jiraiya spoke. You know, seeing you like that working behind the desk reminds me too much of your father. He used to love this study, Jiraiya stated, changing the subject. Naruto's parents, that was his reason for coming here. Naruto knew who his parents were. He never told the blonde, but it was his task to do so. He had not planned to tell Naruto about his parentage before the whole Akatsuki mess was over. But now, Naruto knew. That is where things were complicated. Naruto's face took a thoughtful expression. I forgot that father was your prized student. Moreover, you saw him as your own son, am I correct? Yay, Jiraiya replied with a proud smile. Minato was the son I never had. The brat was a genius. A pity I was nothing like him. The words worked like magic. The mood in the study became tense. Jiraiya looked away from Naruto, not wanting to meet his gaze. Sighing, Jiraiya looked back at Naruto. Naruto, he was cut off by Naruto. Jiraiya, I just came back from a 3-year training trip. The training was harsh to both my mind and body. Today is the first time I stepped inside my parents' house. A house that I was supposed to grow up in. Jiraiya, I saw the crib that my parents had prepared for me. You and the Sandaime made sure I never saw this house or sleep in the bed that was made for me. Jiraiya looked down in shame at hearing those words. It must have been draining emotionally for Naruto to see a house he was supposed to grow up in. But instead he had been left to live in the orphanage while he had inherited a house from his parents. I simply do not care for your reasons in keeping the truth from me, Jiraiya. As it stands, it matters not because the damage has already been done. I know you may be sorry for not looking after me while I was taking crap from the villagers. I mean, it is the responsibility of a godfather to take of their godson, right? Jiraiya could only nod. Let's face the facts, you only came back to the village and offered to train me because of the threat of Akatsuki. Had it not been for them, you would have never shown yourself before me. Regardless of that, I do not hate you, Jiraiya. But make no mistake, I am very much angry with you. Naruto paused for a moment, letting the words sink into Jiraiya's head. Now, if you can leave me alone to enjoy this free time I have, it would be highly appreciated. Jiraiya slumped his shoulders. He had expected worse. At least Naruto did not hate him for keeping the truth from him and not being there for him in his younger days. Fine, I will go. But meet me at Harem's office tomorrow at 8 a.m. We have a lot to discuss. Naruto figured they wanted to know more about his training and who he was with. He had basically not told them anything about his training trip. Knowing Tsunade, she would not be satisfied until she got some answers. He was not going to give any he did not want, though. There was also the matter of his parentage. Since he now knew, it would change things completely. 3 hours before 8 a.m., the time he was supposed to meet Tsunade and Jiraiya, Naruto was already awake. He had slept comfortably on his parents' bed. Yes, he had decided to use his parents' room as his. The house was his now, there was no use in preserving the room for another use. He could as well enjoy the comfort of the bed that his parents used. Ultimately, sleeping in the bed had resulted in a sound sleep. But he had set up an alarm to wake up early so he could begin to work on other things. Yesterday his clones had finished cleaning the house. Luckily, only a few of the furnitures would need to be replaced to suit his liking. Overall, the house was cleaned and looked like it had been giving refuge to someone for quite some time. His clones had not rushed while cleaning. They did it slowly and ensured that no dirt was left behind. Today he would have them clean outside the house. The garden was a mess. It appeared that whoever was taking care of the house when the Sandaime was still alive did not bother to look after it. Naruto had always liked flowers. He had planned to go buy some after meeting with Tsunade. But first thing first, Taju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. A cloud of smoke gave birth to 10 clones of Naruto. Naruto waved them to get on to their duties. They already knew what they were tasked to do. Without a complaint, the clones first went to the basement to get the required tools to service the garden. Naruto went to the kitchen. He began to boil some water. He waited calmly at the kitchen for the water to boil. After it had finally boiled, Naruto made himself a cup of black tea. Even though he did not enjoy tea as much as Itachi did, it was still refreshing in the morning. Perhaps in the morning was the only time he would say he enjoyed drinking tea. Speaking of Itachi, he was already missing the man's stoic presence. The intelligent conversations they used to have and the often training they used to do, he was missing all that. Funny thing was that it had been just 4 days since he left the Uchiha clan hideout. Now was the 2nd day since he returned to Konoha. Naruto took his cup of tea to the study. He placed the cup on the desk and went on to take a scroll from the shelves. He went back to his desk and sat behind it on a chair and began to read the scroll while sipping his tea. His mother was also familiar with seals. Her seals were unique only to Uzumaki clan members. When she came into Konoha from Uzushiogakure, she came with so many scrolls from her mother and had certain knowledge of seals. His father was able to benefit from her scrolls. Perhaps if it were not for his mother, his father would never had become renowned for his mastery in Fuinjutsu. The Uzumaki clan was indeed ingenious and creative with their work. Naruto could only wonder what the clan would have been able to do with seals had great villages not annihilated them for their creativity. Well, there was always a price for power. A pity that the Uzumaki paid a hefty price, while they were a peaceful nation secluded in their own little island. They distanced themselves from fighting when necessary. Naruto picked up his cup and peeked inside it. There was nothing left. He had drank all the tea without even realizing it. And he kept saying he was not the one who enjoyed tea. Sighing, Naruto placed the cup on the desk and continued reading the scroll. It had details about seals that were used to seal bijus. Interesting part was that his clan had been the first clan to develop a seal that could hold a biju and imprison it inside a human. Perhaps his clan had inherited something from the Sage of Six Paths. Despite the hypothesis not being confirmed by either clan, Senju and Uzumaki were relatives. Whoever was Uzumaki had Senju heritage in them. That meant that Uzumaki were also related to the Sage Six Paths. Senju and Uchiha inherited power, while Uzumaki inherited his mind and life force. That sounded just about right. An hour left before he could meet Tsunade. Naruto took the scroll and returned it to the shelf. He slowly went back to his desk and opened a drawer. He took out the papers he had written yesterday on his book complex Fuinjutsu. He wanted to ensure that he had explained everything clearly without a mistake. Although he doubted he made any mistake, it did not kill him to check. After rereading everything, Naruto was satisfied. He stood up and stretched his muscles before looking at the time. More than 40 minutes left before he had to leave. He smiled as a thought came into his mind. Naruto walked out of the study and went straight to his room. His sword was perfectly placed near his bed. He had yet to find a perfect place for it. The basement did not seem like a place his sword would appreciate to be kept. Keeping it close to him had been the choice he had taken. He picked up the sword inside its sheath before wrapping the sheath on his back. He walked onto a clearing. No, a training ground at the back of the house. He liked the house because it had everything he would need. He did not have to go anywhere to get some training done. It was good for his body to keep it conditioned at the highest level. He did not want his skills to become dull. That can happen if he misses a few days of training. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Naruto created a clone. The clone stood in front of him with its own copy of the Sword of the Thunder God. Without another word, both Narutos disappeared in blurs and engaged in a fierce taijutsu battle. The clone rushed at Naruto. Upon reaching the original, the clone brought out its right hand and went for an uppercut. Naruto was more than ready for the challenge. He blocked the incoming punch with his left hand. He held out his right hand creating a Rasengan. The clone immediately leapt away from Naruto so to avoid being hit by the A-rank jutsu. Naruto did not want to use the jutsu, simply he just wanted the clone to make some distance with him. He knew that with its punch block the clone would attempt something else. Naruto disappeared in a blur towards his clone. He appeared in front of with his foot raised and attempted to kick the clone at its temple. Unfortunately, the clone had good reflexes just as he did. It brought out both its hands to block the powerful kick. Naruto's kick was unable to penetrate or break the guard. The clone moved shiftily to kick him on his waist level with its right foot. Naruto saw the attack coming and countered with his own foot. The two legs collided in midair but not for long as both of them were retrieved making way for the legs which had been used for balance. But the results was the same. Naruto jumped back away from his clone. The clone did not give him a chance to breath. It attacked him again and they engaged in a taijutsu battle across the training ground. The battle took several minutes before both parties finally separated. Naruto unsheathed his blade and stuck his finger on a small hole on the blade's handle. He spun the blade in front of him like a fan before retrieving his finger and flicked the sword. He caught it and held it in front of him. Just as he was about to charge at his clone, an alarm rang. Naruto sighed and sheathed his blade. He looked at his clone. "Dispel yourself," he said, walking away from the training ground. Before going into the house, he went to check how the clones were doing at the garden. He smiled when he arrived. They were doing well. All the unwanted weeds had been uprooted and dead flowers also. They were also preparing the soil for plantation. He smiled. Definitely, after meeting with Tsunade he would go and buy some flowers. Nodding to himself, Naruto walked inside his house and went straight to his room. He did not do anything other than taking a warm, refreshing bath. After the bath, nothing else was done. He just changed into new clothes. He took out some clothes he had bought on his way back to the village. He wore a long-sleeved white shirt and dark blue pants along with blue shinobi sandals. Hokage's office. Tsunade sat leaning against her chair with Jiraiya sitting on the window of her office. Naruto. He was dominating her every thought. The fact that he knew his parentage changed a lot of things. Added to that, he was living inside of his parents' house. The council would have to be informed of this, or they would start yapping to her about this and that. She definitely had no time to listen to whatever they would want to say about Naruto. The house was his, it was his inheritance. The council had been keeping away Naruto's inheritance and parentage. The fact that he found out about it and went to claim it without even speaking to them will cause them to stir. Tsunade glanced at Jiraiya. Ever since he entered the office, he had been oddly quiet. Jiraiya was never the one to be quiet no matter what the situation was. Serious. Yes, he could be serious if the situation called for it. Do you think he hates us? She asked her former teammate quietly. Jiraiya shook his head. No. I spoke to him yesterday about it when I went to inform him of this meeting. What did he say to you? He did not care for my reasons and that he was angry with me. He also said he did not hate me. Jiraiya did not tell Tsunade of Naruto's last words to him. Truthfully, he was dreading what sort of punishment the blonde was planning for him. And me. He did not say anything about you. He only spoke of me and Sensei. I don't think he blames you for anything. Tsunade sighed in relief. Well, that is good to know, she said. But still, even I knew of his parentage but did not bother to say anything to him. In fact, I was not planning to tell him anything until he became strong enough to protect himself. Don't feel bad about anything, Harem, Jiraiya said in a consoling voice. Sensei and I were the ones who messed up things. I can't say Sensei alone is to blame. But I, who was Naruto's godfather, should have at least been there for him. Tsunade wanted to say that he indeed had messed up big time. But she knew that her teammate regretted his choice for not taking care of Naruto when he was still young. Probably he had even chosen to take the blonde on a 3-year training trip so that he could make up for lost time. She was not going to point out Jiraiya's wrongs for him. He was already beating himself for it. He did not need her to add more to that misery. There was also the fact that Jiraiya had felt responsible for Minato's death. He felt that as his sensei he should have been there to protect him. He failed to do that and it pained him. I just hope that he will. Tsunade trailed off as she sensed something. Naruto appeared in the middle of the office right in front of Tsunade's desk. He just appeared. Just like that. There were no leaves that came with him, there was not cloud of smoke, there was nothing. He just appeared. Not even a flash of something was seen. Morning, Tsunade-sama. Jiraiya. Naruto greeted the two former teammates with a small smile. Jiraiya simply nodded to Naruto. Tsunade responded with words. Morning to you too, Naruto, she said with a smile. Did you sleep well at your new home? Yes, the night was pleasant, Naruto replied, still standing in front of Tsunade's desk. I'm glad, Tsunade said before clearing her throat. For what purpose, only she knew. Can you sit down, Naruto? Jiraiya and I have things to discuss with you. I would imagine so, Naruto stated, taking a sit. He would never have been called at this time of the morning to the office if there was nothing to talk about. First thing, we will ask you some questions which we will ask that you give us honest answers, Jiraiya said, taking over from Tsunade. Tsunade nodded. Yes, you can trust us with anything, she said. Naruto simply remained quiet. The smile on his face was now replaced by an impassive expression on his face. He waited for Tsunade and Jiraiya to start with the discussion. But that did not mean he was going to share with them everything. He would not want to put Itachi's life in danger. Itachi was no longer strong as he was given his condition. If he were to tell them about him, they would surely try to get him to tell them about his whereabouts. Naruto knew that not even Jiraiya or Tsunade were aware of Itachi's mission. Tell me, Naruto, how did you find out about your parentage? It was a closely guarded secret that only Anbu and the council members knew of, Jiraiya questioned, looking straight into Naruto's eyes. Someone told me about it, Naruto responded calmly. Who? This time, it was Tsunade who asked the question. I cannot tell you that. I made that perfectly clear yesterday. Tsunade gritted her teeth but remained calm. Naruto was not making things easy for her. She wanted to protect him from the council should they know that he had not been with Jiraiya during the past 3 years. But for her to protect him, she needed him to be honest with her and tell her everything. There was also the fact that they had to know who had told Naruto about his parentage and for what purpose. She wanted to know if village secrets were being leaked by someone else. She also had to know if someone her and Jiraiya knew had gone to tell Naruto about his parentage while they had worked to keep it away from him and the whole world. Naruto, why can't you just tell us? It's just me and Jiraiya. What do you think we will do? Because if I do tell you, I would be betraying someone's trust in me. I cannot do something like that. And as for what I think you will do, I have not thought that far since I never planned to tell you anything that could violate someone's trust in me. Tsunade was rather unnerved by Naruto's calm demeanor. She narrowed her eyes at him suspiciously. Whoever had told Naruto about his parentage must have meant a lot to Naruto if he was not willing to give them even a name. Even Jiraiya now looked at Naruto suspiciously. He could not understand why Naruto would not tell them the name of the person who told him of his parentage. Jiraiya's gut was telling him that whoever told Naruto about his parentage is the one that trained him for the past 3 years. He had a strong feeling towards that. Naruto noticed their suspicious gazes and inwardly shook his head in disappointment. Just because he was refusing to tell them about something, they were already looking at him with suspicion. Tsunade-sama, I will let that suspicious look on your eyes slide for now, Naruto said, causing Tsunade to look at him with slightly wide eyes. Godfather, you are looking at me with suspicion simply because I refused to tell the name of the person who told me of my parentage. Ironic, you look at me with suspicion because I refused to tell you something, as I would be betraying someone. You who being my godfather lied to my face when I asked you if you of my parents, Naruto said, his tone still calm. Jiraiya had the decency to flinch and look down in shame. What concerns you the most, Jiraiya, Tsunade-sama? Is it the fact that someone told me of my heritage? Is that someone had the guts to be honest with me? Is it that I am keeping things from you too? Shouldn't you be happy that I went away and came back safe and strong enough to protect myself? Jiraiya and Tsunade were not really expecting Naruto to say something like that. So they were surprised upon hearing those words from Naruto. Perhaps Naruto is right. They should be happy that Naruto had returned to them safely. He had transformed his personality and attitude. He had come back smart. As people who care for Naruto, they should have been happy for him. So why were they focused on grinding information from Naruto? Is it because they did not like it when Naruto kept things from them? Was it being fair to him? They also kept things from that could have changed his life way sooner. Naruto would never do anything that would harm Konoha or any of his friends. They knew that. Naruto's love for Konoha ran deep. He would never do anything or associate himself with someone who could harm the village. If they knew that, why did they even look at him with suspicion? I should have known better, Tsunade said more to herself than anyone. Naruto, it is not that we are not happy that you have returned and know of your heritage. We are just worried about you. You also have to understand that your heritage is an S-class secret. I do not believe that you met anyone from the village who could have told you about it, since recently there has been no one from our top ranks to depart the village. So it would be alarming if someone outside the village knows one of our closely guarded secrets. Jiraiya added to Tsunade's words. You should have known that I would never do anything that would harm Konoha, Naruto said. There is nothing to worry about in terms of village security. Regardless of your concerns, I still will not tell you who told me of my heritage. I am very thankful of what the person did for me. If not told, I would have been running around the world not knowing who I was. Now that I know who I am and where I come from, I can live freely and be myself. Back then, what made me strong and kept me alive was my heart and desire to protect that which was precious to me. Now I know my roots. I know what is expected of me as Kushina Uzumaki and Minato Namikaze's son. Jiraiya had to nod. Naruto did make sense with what he was saying. He also had to give the blonde praise. While speaking of the mysterious person who told him about his heritage, Naruto never gave them anything. Not the gender, not even who the person was associated with. He did not even reveal whether the person was from Konoha or not. I understand. I think Harem also understands, Jiraiya said, eyeing the blonde Hokage before looking straight at Naruto. However, I need you to answer some questions, he said. Naruto waited for the questions. Was the person who told you of your heritage the one you had been with in duration of the past 3 years? Yes, Naruto responded calmly. You said you could now be myself. Are you saying that before you left Konoha you were not being yourself? Tsunade was shocked at question. Jiraiya was asking if Naruto had been wearing a mask before he left the village for his training. Naruto smiled slightly at the Sannin. How perceptive of you, Jiraiya. You noticed that little detail, Naruto said. To answer your question, yes and no. Yes. Not every smile I gave was real. Most of them were fakes hiding my pain and loneliness. I also was not stupid as people might have thought I was. I believe only Shikamaru knew the real me. No. I was always kind-hearted by nature. My desire to protect was not fake, but that was something that came from my heart. In addition, my dream of being Hokage came to be because I wanted to be acknowledged and seen as acceptable. When I left Konoha for the training trip, the way I was, that was part of the real me. Now as you see me, this is who I am. This is the real me. You could as well say that right now I am complete. Naruto's words left both Tsunade and Jiraiya bewildered. None of them had seen this one coming. Why did I not realize it? Tsunade and Jiraiya asked themselves. Now are we in agreement that you won't be asking me about who I trained with and who told me about my heritage? Yes, Tsunade said with a sigh. Well then, is there something else? Yes, but before that, where is that necklace I gave you? Tsunade asked. She had not seen Naruto wearing it yesterday. Even today he was not wearing it. I have it placed somewhere safe. I know you gave it to me to wear. Well, technically, I won it. But knowing how valuable it is, I doubt you would have given it to me if you did not want to. I stopped wearing it when I began training. I did not want to lose it, and also I feel uncomfortable wearing it knowing what it does. He was not going to explain to Tsunade what it does. She knew that the necklace was really a seal that could activate on its own once a certain amount of power of a Biju was released by a Jinchuriki. But that does not mean I do not appreciate it. I know it is very precious to you, knowing that it is the only material thing that can remind you of your grandfather other than Konoha itself. However, I will not give it back. I will keep it and give it to someone precious to me. Jiraiya quickly responded with a grin. You mean like a girl? Naruto sighed. Jiraiya was a shameless pervert. In this case, he was right. Tsunade smiled knowing that Naruto had not just discarded the gift she gave to him. And his silence proved that Jiraiya was right, he was going to give it to a girl. She just hoped that the girl was well-mannered, beautiful, strong and kind-hearted like Naruto. She would not accept anything less than that. Do what want me to reveal that you are the son of the Yondaime to the village? Tsunade asked. Actually, she wanted him to say yes so she could see the look on the faces of the villagers when they hear that the very person they have hated and treated as a social outcast is the son of their beloved Yondaime Hokage. Do what you want, Naruto said with a nonchalant shrug. Tsunade nodded. Naruto, you have also not told us about your training and how strong you are. Jiraiya said. Ah, Jiraiya, a ninja must have his secrets. I cannot give you a proper rank without knowing how strong you are. Currently you are just a chunin. Chunin. Last time I remember I was just a genin. Naruto said, knowing that he was not promoted after the Chunin exams despite showing skills that were compatible to a Chunin. Tsunade smirked. After you left I promoted you after reviewing your performance at the exams. You fought Gaara after having released Shikaku and defeated him. No genin can do that, and also your fight with Neji was impressive. The council just wanted you to be grounded. Tsunade explained. Naruto just nodded, not even looking the slightest excited or thrilled by the news. In measuring your strength, I know a perfect way to have you show what you can do. You cannot refuse, as it is an order from you, Hokage. Naruto just sighed again. He had expected as much from Tsunade. She would not rest until she knew how strong he was. Knowing how strong he was would work in her favor when she has to be overprotective of him. You will be at Training Ground 7 tomorrow at 10 p.m. That was an order, not a request by the Godime Hokage. Naruto simply nodded. We also wanted to tell you about the Akatsuki, Jiraiya said. They have disbanded. I know that. How? Naruto shrugged in response. He really did not have to respond to each the question. That does not matter, Tsunade said. The good news is that Naruto is safe from them, and he, Tsunade, was cut off by the opening door. Tsunade-sama, I have brought you the reports. A grown-up Sakura trailed off when she noticed the spiky blonde hair. She stood still, staring with wide eyes. Naruto turned around to look at his former teammate in Team 7. He gave the girl a smile. Sakura, he said. Sakura walked closer to Naruto with a mountain of papers in her hands, and Naruto. Naruto nodded. Sakura beamed up brightly at seeing her former teammate for the first time in 3 years. Naruto, she said happily. How have you been? How was your training? When did you come back? Sakura started asking questions like a schoolgirl. The adults just watched with small smiles in their faces. I am well. I returned yesterday. How have you been? Good. Sakura replied. You look, wow. She said, dropping her reports to the floor like they did not matter. She touched her shirt and spun around. How do I look? Beautiful as always, Naruto said, giving the girl a lady killer smile that made the girl blush at the simple compliment. Jiraiya, on the other hand, was singing in pure happiness seeing how well Naruto was handling Sakura. The old Naruto would have just insulted her. However, this one made her blush. This meant one thing for the Sannin, gold mine. Naruto stood up and looked back at Tsunade. Well, I believe we have already discussed everything. I will see you tomorrow, Hokage-sama. Naruto said and disappeared in flash of yellow. Tsunade blinked and blinked again. Damn, Jiraiya. You forgot to ask him about that. Jiraiya smiled. I will go and ask him now. If he disappeared like that, then he is off to his house. I will see you later, Harem, the self-proclaimed super pervert said, jumping out of the window. Sakura looked at her master, forgetting that she had dropped the reports she wanted Tsunade to sign on the floor. Tsunade-sama, was that really Naruto? She asked. That Naruto was very different from the one she knew. Still, she was glad that he had changed. Yes, Sakura, that was Naruto, Tsunade replied, looking straight at her student. He really has changed. Tsunade sighed, rubbing her temples. Yes, Sakura, you have already told him that. I have. She sort of like questioned herself, like that conversation earlier with Naruto had not happened. Sakura, Tsunade called, snapping Sakura out of her thoughts. Aren't you forgetting something? Huh? Tsunade moved her eyes down on the floor. Seeing that Sakura was not getting her, she moved her fingers and pointed at the papers. Sakura looked at them and flushed in embarrassment. I forgot about them, she said, leaning down to pick up the papers. These are the reports you had me prepare yesterday so you could approve, she said, handing over Tsunade the papers. Great. More paperwork. Tsunade yelled inside her head at the work Sakura was giving her. Well, at least this was from the hospital. She cared too much for the hospital to avoid its work. She did not have much work to do anymore since Sakura and Shizune did most of the work. Tsunade took the paperwork and placed it aside. She first had to finish some of the paperwork her receptionist had brought her. Where is Shizune? She had a night shift at the hospital. Did not she tell you that yesterday? Tsunade sighed. Shizune had told her yesterday that she was going to take a night shift at the hospital. Sometimes when Shizune took a night shift, she would often come at the office in the morning to check if things were in order, then go home to sleep. I guess she had a lot more work to do last night, she thought. Without Shizune, she would not have anyone to dump on her work. Tsunade-sama, Sakura said, causing Tsunade to look at her. Now that Naruto is back, will Team 7 be formed again? I mean, all the team members are present in the village. In addition, you did say that Sasuke-kun sometimes takes missions with Kakashi-sensei. Tsunade sighed for the 100th time since she woke up. I don't know, Sakura, she said honestly. It depends on Naruto. After what happened between him and Sasuke, I don't think he will want to be on the same team with Sasuke. But I will ask him tomorrow about it. In the topic of Sasuke, Naruto had never brought up his name since he returned. It was like he was not even concerned about Sasuke. It was like he did not care for the Uchiha. Oh, Sakura breathed out. She knew that when Naruto left for his training, he was not in the most of happy person. In fact, he was somewhat scary to look at because Sasuke had almost killed him. Of course, she did not believe it at first when she was told that Sasuke had attempted and almost succeeded in killing Naruto. But when showed evidence, she believed it. Still, she could not understand why Sasuke would do something like that to Naruto. He might have been loud and annoying, but he was their friend and teammate. Naruto was the only friend that Sasuke had. Regardless, she still naively believed that things would go back to the way they were before the Sasuke retrieval mission. She wanted Team 7 to be back together again, so they could be a family again. Sakura, it might be hard for you to understand, but at least try to see things in Naruto's point of view, Tsunade stated, not wanting to give the girl hopes that Team 7 would be reinstated again. Sakura just nodded. Are you going back to the hospital? Tsunade asked, changing the subject. Yes, Sakura answered immediately. I have a few patients that I have to see before noon, she said. Tsunade nodded in understanding. Tell the rest of Naruto's friends to be at Training Ground 7 tomorrow at 10h00. What will be happening at my old training ground? It's a surprise, Tsunade said with a small smile. An hour later, after the meeting with Tsunade, Naruto had flashed back to his house to get money for the things he wanted to buy. First, he had went on to buy the furniture he wanted. He was surprised to see that shop owners were actually smiling at him while he bought the things he wanted. Once he bought his things, he had given them the directions to his house, so they could deliver his things. Some of the things had to be added, some custom things he wanted, so it would take a few hours for them to finish. Nevertheless, at noon they said they would bring him his furniture. Naruto appeared in front of the Yamanaka flower shop. He used the roofs in his own advanced shunshine that was similar to the one Anbu used to travel and teleport himself to places. He wanted to avoid meeting some of his friends today when necessary before tomorrow. He had planned to see them today, but since Tsunade had planned other things, he would see them tomorrow since he had no doubt they would be at the training ground. Naruto opened the doors to the flower shop, walked over to the flowers without consulting anyone at the counter. He did not even notice who was behind the counter. Hello. A voice Naruto recognized very well called. Can I help you? Naruto turned around and looked at the blonde-haired girl behind the counter. Ino stared at him with wide eyes upon seeing his face. He was so, wow. She wanted to squeak just by looking at those deep blue eyes that stared at hers. In Naruto. Ino, Naruto said, walking over to the girl. Is it really you? Yes, Naruto replied, keeping his impassive expression. He had been so proud during his time with Itachi. Ino got away from the counter and went on to stand in front of him. Her eyes were ogling him from toe to head. My Naruto, you look wonderful, she said slyly. Well, expect Ino to be subtle and she will give you just that. She was straightforward and was not ashamed of her behavior. In fact, she seemed proud of it because it was who it was. Naruto looked at the girl studying her. She certainly has grown well and her body was well developed, more womanly. She dwarfed Sakura with her chest. In terms of looks, she was just as beautiful. Naruto shoved his thoughts at the back of his head. During his time with Itachi, he never had these kind of thoughts. Perhaps it was because there was a lack of females at the hideout. At the hideout, he even rarely smiled. However, ever since he returned, he had been smiling more often. Nevertheless, he knew that the smiles would disappear soon and replaced by a bored look. When did you return? How was? Naruto cut her off. One question at a time, Ino, Naruto said. I returned yesterday. And you did not tell your friends that you returned. We missed you so much, you know. I had important matters to deal with, Naruto replied. Ino nodded. I'm amazed. It's not just your appearance that has changed, but your attitude as well. I never thought that you would change. Unexpected things occur every time, Naruto responded. What are you doing here anyway? I did not think that you liked flowers. Ino said happily. You did not know me, Naruto said. I want to buy some flowers for my garden. You have a garden? Yes. Where? As far as I know, you live in an apartment, Ino said. That was indeed a surprise to her. She did not take Naruto as the kind to be taking care of a garden. At my house, Naruto replied, not hiding that he was now living inside his inherited house. Wow, you have your own house? Ino asked, greatly surprised by what Naruto had just said. Yes, Naruto replied. Ino was questioning him a lot. Not that he had anything to hide, he just had come to order the flowers then go back to his house. Okay. What kind of flowers do you want? Naruto listed everything he wanted, from annuals, bulbs, roses, perennials, herbs, and vines. One particular tree that he liked was showed in a poster. A redbud tree. The tree was beautiful. Naruto wanted it on his garden. The flowers Naruto wanted amazed Ino. He did truly know what he wanted in his garden. Thinking of it, she really wanted to see it. Anyone who liked flowers had to be her friend, especially if it was a hot guy like Naruto. Naruto handed the money his flowers cost. Some of the things you bought here are not in the flower shop but at our garden. I will have to get them there. Ino said. It's all right, Naruto said. Pen and paper, he said. Ino gave him what he requested. Naruto wrote something on the paper then handed it back to Ino. What is it? Directions to my house. You will have to deliver them. Okay. Ino said rather happily that she should have been. With that, Naruto walked away from the flower shop without another word. Ino just stared at his retrieving figure with her head resting on her hand. After Naruto stepped out of the flower shop, he took the roofs and headed back home. Naruto's house. Jiraiya had been waiting for Naruto for a few minutes now. Since he left Tsunade's office, he had said he was coming here, but he had taken a little detour to the hot springs. Unfortunately, there was no one as it was still morning. He was utterly saddened by that. He got no material for his next book. It was not acceptable. But there was nothing he could do about it. He could not drag women from their homes and force them to play in the hot springs while he watched. Perhaps he could have Naruto use that sexy jutsu for him. Yep, that would definitely do, since the hot and exotic blonde-haired women Naruto was able to make had knocked him a few times. He doubted the blonde would do it for him anyway. He sensed Naruto at the entrance of the house and left the study to the entrance. Jiraiya, that is just wrong. No matter your relationship with a person, you don't enter their houses and wander around while they are not around, Naruto stated as he entered the house. He sensed the Sannin upon arriving at the house. Come one Naruto. I have been coming in and out of this house before you were even born. Yes, my parents allowed you to enter the house. But now the house is owned by me. I am forbidding you to enter my house when I am not in, Naruto said. If you ignore that, you will regret it. Now that was just wrong. Not the words themselves, but the way Naruto said them and the little smile he had on his face. It sounded like Orochimaru had spoken those words. That was never a comfort to anyone. Therefore, Jiraiya nodded. So then, what is it? I thought everything had been discussed, Naruto said, going to the sitting room. Jiraiya followed him. Yes. Well, there was something we forgot to ask you. What is it? Twice since you have returned, you have disappeared from Tsunade's office in a yellow flash. I don't understand your question. Did you learn your father's most prized jutsu? Naruto stared at Jiraiya for a moment before replying. Yes. When? How did you even get your hands on it? Entrance to the house was strictly forbidden unless given permission by the Hokage. Are you expecting me to answer you, Jiraiya? Naruto asked calmly. Yes. I am curious. No. I won't answer your question, Naruto stated, standing up. Jiraiya gritted his teeth at the lack of answers. There was no doubt, the person who told Naruto of his heritage also trained him and sneak in the house to take the scrolls. That person was either a former Anbu of the village or someone else who was privileged to S-rank secrets of the village. He had thought of a certain name, but he had shrugged it off as the odds were against it. Fine, he said in a defeated tone. He liked the old Naruto much better than this one. He followed Naruto outside the house through the back door. Naruto smiled at the work his clones had done. The grass was just cut and the weed had been rooted off his green grass. Added with some flowers, the garden will be very much beautiful. You have done well to put the house back to perfect condition, Jiraiya commented. Ramen stand. It was just past noon and Naruto had decided to get something at the ramen stand. He had missed the sweet taste of Ikaraku ramen. Itachi had never allowed him to eat any. He never even bought any each time he went away to get food for them to eat. Other foods Naruto was allowed as Itachi said they were good for his body and overall grown. Itachi had reminded him that he was shorter than any of his age group friends. Naruto had admitted that ramen did not give him the nutrients that other healthy food would give him. Healthy food that were rich in nutrients was also good for him on his training. To be able to recover quickly and keep a healthy body, he needed to eat healthy food. He could not always depend on the Kyuubi to deal with healing his body. The Kyuubi also could not give him the nutrients that his body needed. He could only get them from food that he ate. And so he had gone for 3 years without eating a single noodle of ramen. Ino had already delivered the flowers he wanted. He kept them safe and watered. He would plant them at night or tomorrow morning. It would depend on whether he had time today. If not, tomorrow before training ground 7 he would plant them. Ino had insisted on getting to see the inside of his house. Luckily, there was no portrait of his parents in the sitting room and kitchen, the only place he had showed Ino. If Ino were to know that his father was the Yondaime Hokage, the whole of Konoha would be aware of it by the end of the day. He girl did not know when to keep her mouth shut after hearing something that other people did not know. Naruto arrived at the ramen stand and took his sit. Hello Ayame, he greeted to the woman who was attending another customer. Ayame took notice of Naruto and rushed over to him. Naruto, is that really you? Yes, Naruto responded. The moment the yes left his mouth, Ayame jumped the counter and threw herself at Naruto. She hit him, making him fall off his chair. She had more power than Naruto had anticipated. Both crashed at the ground with Ayame sitting on top of Naruto. I have missed you so much, Naruto, she said happily with no intentions to get off him as she had yet to realize that she was on top of him. I missed you too, Ayame, Naruto said. Not that I have a problem with you sitting on top of me, but am really uncomfortable. Naruto stated, looking at Ayame's eyes. Ayame took notice that she was indeed on top of Naruto and he was uncomfortable, as he had hit the ground awkwardly. She blushed slightly and hit Naruto on his shoulder for his comment before getting off him. She stalked off to the back of the counter. Naruto stood up and dusted himself before sitting down again. When did you come back? Ayame asked, looking at Naruto happily. Yesterday, Naruto responded. How are you and how was the 3 years for you? I'm well. The 3 years were quiet, pleasant and satisfactory, Naruto replied. How about you? I'm well. It just was never been the same without you around. Your disappearance was quickly noted the second or perhaps the day you left. I would imagine so given my character those days, Naruto responded with a smile. Those days, he was very loud and would be going around the streets of Konoha shouting something to anyone. He was not very quiet and his orange made it easy for people to recognize him without mistake or a second look. Father! Ayame shouted. Come here, there is someone I want you to see. A second later Tsuki appeared behind the counter. He still held a spoon on his hand. It was clear that he was cooking something before Ayame decided to call him. What is it, Ayame? He asked. Ayame pointed at Naruto. Tsuki looked at Naruto and then smiled softly. Naruto, my boy, you have returned, he said. Yes, Naruto responded with a smile of his own. How have you been, Tsuki-san? Good, good. I must say, I'm happy to see back in one piece and looking to be in perfect condition, Tsuki said. The Ikaraku had been like his family, seeing that they provided for him and were the only people who allowed him to eat without overcharging him and just kicking him out of their shops. They sometimes even allowed him to eat without money to pay for his food. He was very grateful for them and what they have done for his life. How has business been? Naruto asked whether the ramen stand was still making profit or not. Tsuki smiled pleasantly. Good, he said. If it wasn't, we would not have opened now, would have we? Even if you just to open for you number one customer? Naruto asked. Tsuki chuckled slightly. If the bar was closed, I would open anytime for my favorite customer, he said. Naruto smiled. Can I have one bowl of miso ramen? He said, getting his order. Ayame nodded and went back to the kitchen along with her father, who went back to cooking what he had been cooking before Ayame called him. Naruto did not have to wait for too long to get his ramen. He ate it surprisingly slowly and savoring it. Ayame was really surprised to see Naruto eat with proper manners. She was even more surprised when Naruto said only a single bowl was enough. No, it's free for today since I have missed you, Ayame said, refusing to take Naruto's money. Please, Ayame. I have already ate much more from you guys for free. At least now that I have money, allow me to pay for my meals, Naruto said, trying to convince Ayame to take his money. He did not want the Ikaraku to suffer on their income because he was eating from them for free. No, as I said, the meal was for free. Naruto sighed and pocketed the money. Perhaps when he was still young he would have gladly accepted the free ramen because money at that time was scarce. He also did not understand what it meant for the Ikaraku when they gave him free food. Well, the girl was not going to budge, he could at least be grateful. Well, thanks anyway, Naruto finally said. I will see you around, Ayame. With that he disappeared from the ramen stand. Ayame blinked twice and then shrugged before going to the kitchen to help her father with kitchen duties. Later that day, after Naruto had left the ramen stand, he had gone home and went straight to the study to continue with his book. He spent hours writing it. Then he was interrupted. To be precise, his own thoughts interrupted him. He had remembered the time Jiraiya had been refusing to train him, saying he had to do research for his next book. Naruto had worked the whole night writing the next book to the Ika Ika series. Jiraiya had been devastated upon learning what Naruto had done. More shocked when a courier took the notes and delivered them to a feudal lord of another country. Naruto was surprised when the feudal lord actually giggled perversely after reading the first page of his script. At that time he had just thought he could write well as much as Jiraiya could. Perhaps he is indeed right. He was only 12 at that time and he was able to write stuff that Jiraiya needed to peak on women to write. He wrote it without peeking. That spoke much about his own thoughts and imaginations. Unable to continue with his book, Naruto had decided to visit to Forest of Death to blow off some steam.